Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and once again, despite winning all the stats that matter, the Demons simply could not capitalise on their inside 50 dominance nor convert in front of the big sticks, and heartbreakingly went down to the old enemy by the slimmest of margins. Joining me tonight to dissect what could have been is George. Good evening, George.
Good evening to Andy. Good evening, Binman. Good evening to all our loyal and faithful listeners. It is a good thing that we're doing this podcast on a Wednesday night. It's given us the chance to cool down about the umpiring, or has it?
Yeah, slightly. Unfortunately, I wasn't available last night to do the show, but we're back tonight, and the blood pressure's gone down quite a bit, and the anger has subsided, but the sadness is still there. Also joining us tonight to break down all the stats is Binman. Good evening, Binman.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George. Good evening, Demonlanders. It was, I can't begin to tell you how frustrating the umpiring was. And it's not even it's not even a useful conversation about it cost us a victory or whatever. The point is you don't know what it meant. Like, you know, does that 1 point that 𝗍𝗂𝗃𝗁𝗀𝗃 kicked because he swan dived forward, and that was not far below me. That was sort of, I had a good view of that. It was just pathetic like that. But you know, the point isn't that it cost us a victory, and it didn't. We cost ourselves our victory. Although, and we'll get into it a bit, is that I think, you know, it's easy to be a bit unfair on the Ds. They're a bloody good side, Collingwood, and their class really was the difference, I reckon. So particularly their skills by foot and to a lesser extent by hand. But it's beyond. It's really having a deleterious sort of impact on my enjoyment of watching footy. It really, really is, because I had people around me who were going bananas, like totally bananas, and I was sort of felt calm in comparison. But it's just so frustrating, and I know we'll get into it, but the inconsistency absolutely does my head in. So I've been thinking about solutions, but I'm glad we're on Wednesday too. It's been such a weird sort of up and down about how I feel about this game, because I wasn't furious when I left. You know, it was, of course, it was awful to lose. I'm so sick of leaving the MCG and getting the train home, having lost another game by I haven't looked this up, inside goal. How many games at the G have we lost in the last 2 years by under a goal? It just must be a dozen, surely.
Well, it's definitely this game, the first game of the year, the game
Giants,
against
Brisbane, Port.
Giants last year, Port last year, yeah.
Port last year. And so I was immensely proud of the team. I thought Goody did a brilliant tactical job. There's some really, really interesting things to unpack from that. I thought we played super well, but it's devastating losing. I couldn't bring myself. I was going to watch the replay to prepare for the show. I couldn't bring myself to watch the replay. I will, because I think we played really well. So I sort of swung between thinking about it and not thinking about it. So I don't really know how I feel, other than it's just that feeling of walking away from the G. Didn't want to speak to anyone. And I got a question for both of you. Is my daughter asked me when I came home, she could see that I was probably not the time to borrow $20 off me. And she's not despite my best efforts, she's not a big footy fan, doesn't go with me. And maybe that's more about how I support footy. I don't know. But she said to me, you know, you lost by a point. Would you rather lose by a point, or would you rather lose by 30 points?
I've always said, and I don't know why, but I've always said I'd prefer to lose by a bigger margin than the 1 point. But that's just because I'm so angry when that happens, that 1 point, that we were so close. But like logically, that doesn't make sense, you know, in terms of, like, you don't want to get thumped by a team, because that's more problems by getting thumped. But yeah, it just stings when you lose by a point, when you know you could have won, and there were so many opportunities,
we had the
little
lead.
things we could have done. So yeah.
Then George, what's your
losing by 30 is much easier, in the sense that you know you've been beaten by someone who's better than you.
Yeah.
Losing by 1, like in this game, you know, we were on the day, we did everything that to indicate that we were better than Collingwood on the day.
Or at least and that's the other way to look. I mean, and I didn't actually have an answer for my daughter. I was like, I don't bloody know now. It's not the time to ask me. But, if you think Collingwood, I think Collingwood and Brisbane are the two best sides in the AFL at the moment. Really interesting about the data. It's funny that McRae was asked about it. Basically, teams this clear, the history is really, it's one of the most clearest data points. They never win the flag. The Swans were being the example last year. Teams on top of the ladder around 13, particularly with a margin over second, don't go on to win the flag. So McRae was asked about that. But if you think, like I do, that they're one of the best teams going around, and George has made a case that we could, we should have won, and I think that's a good case to make. Is it means, well, okay, if you think Pies are a top four side, well, then we, on that particular performance, we mustn't be too far away. My own view coming away from that game a fair bit is, I don't think we're a top four side, but there's a huge gap between those sort of, even Crows I'd put up there as about the third best time. The ladder, I reckon, is pretty reflective of the three best sides, but then you go down from 4 down to about 12, and you could throw a blanket over the lot of them, I reckon. And we're in that mix, so I think we're a bottom of the top 8 side, and we're a bit off Collingwood and Brisbane. That's where I've pegged us.
Well, you know what? There's no consolation in what you just said to me because, at the end of the day, look where we're sitting on the ladder. What are we? Best of the worst teams? Like, we can't win games. We're kicking ourselves out of games. I know, I can see that we've got a good system and we can take it up to the best teams, but we just either don't know how to win or can't win, and then we drop a game like St Kilda's, and I guarantee you this week against Port, we'll go out like we did at St Kilda and we'll be flat, and they'll probably blow us off the park.
Well, I was pretty close with my assessment last week, wasn't I, about my confidence level in this game, that I was more confident in this game than I was in the Saints. As I said last week, I'm positive that we were set for this game. I also did wonder, and I mentioned it on the pod last week too, is I did wonder whether Collingwood might, coming into the bye, and I reckon they did too. So I reckon they weren't running on top of the ground as well as they could have either. So does
that change your assessment of where we're at if they're loading and weren't at their optimal?
Because I think, as I said, I think we're not a top 4 side. We're a 4 to 10 side. And that was the other thing that I came away from the game thinking, is that sort of, okay, it was a reset. Like, we all love the Ds for all of our lives. And, it's really about the journey, isn't it? And so, for me, the journey is, I think we're on the right path, and maybe it's not this year. Realistically, it's probably not this year, but I think we're on the right path. We just got to get, bring in some better ball users, simple as that. Like, it's a bit like, seeing the weather forecast and it rains and then going, I can't believe it's raining. It's like the reason why we're seeing that recurrent pattern of events is because we've got players, just look at their top 5, 6, 7 players. What are they? Pendlebury, Elliott, Bobby Hill, the 2 Dacos brothers.
Side
bottom. Like they're their top 6 players. They're all elite kicks. Look at our top 6 players. Maxi Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, well, Cos is probably, he's definitely in there, but he's an elite kick, Finey. And then, even Lever and May. Like, none of them are elite kicks. Like, our best players just aren't elite kicks, and I think we saw that, didn't we? Like, the kick from Oliver, kicking it on the full track, not squaring up and kicking that goal. We've got a team, our best players, it's like blunt instruments, and the best teams' best players now are scalpels. So until that changes a bit over time and we bring in, the Lindsay gets more influential, Langford gets more influential, Windsor sort of gets to his level, Colt starts performing, we bring new players in. Like, I'd love to get Wanganeen Miller into the club. Until we do those sorts of things, that's our level, I think.
I'll just want to say that anyone listening live, you might hear both my co-hosts at times sort of drop out. That won't be the case on the final product. That's just my internet seems to be dropping packets. Just a technical term, but it will be fine on the final product. All right, let's get into some things. Each week I invite our loyal listeners to support the podcast, leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts. Truly appreciate your feedback, and as a token of our gratitude, we do give a well-deserved shout-out to those who take the time to share those reviews. And Ralph on the floor writes, where analysis meets obsession, the Demonland podcast is just a recap of isn't just a recap of D's games, it's a deep dive into the heart and soul of what it means to follow the D's. The hosts combine sharp football intellect with the kind of obsessive attention to detail only lifelong supporters can bring, from list management debates to heated match reviews and thoughtful forum Q&As. This podcast is as cathartic as it is informative, a true companion to every emotional twist in a Demons season. And hasn't it been an emotional twist of a season? Well, thanks for that great review, Ralph. Keep that feedback coming. Simply leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we will give you that shout out on the show. If you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you want to leave feedback, ask a question, share a comment for the show, do that under our weekly podcast post or slide into our DMs. We won't read your full name on the air. You can download and listen to the Demonland podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And in addition, come watch us and listen to us on YouTube. Just search for Demonland Podcast to find our channel, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to connect with other passionate D's fans, come over to Demonland at demonland.com. Sign up, join in the conversation with fellow D's fans from across Australia and all around the world. It's completely free. And in addition to posting questions or comments for the show, you'll find endless discussions on all things Melbourne Demons. If you want to jump on the air tonight and have your say on any of the topics that we're covering, you're not going to give us a call. There is a link on demonland.com. So there's call on Microsoft Teams. You don't need to download anything or to take you to a web page. And you can connect directly to us. If you're listening live, head on over to the chat room. Come and chat with us at demonland.com/podcast. Be a part of the discussion in real time. And always, we go live every Monday night, so come catch us as the show happens. Head on over to demonland.com and tune in. I'm going to get straight into the match overview. In one of the most intense and emotionally charged King's birthday clashes in recent memory, Melbourne fell heartbreakingly short, going down to Collingwood by a solitary point in front of a near-capacity MCG crowd, while the result extended the Demons' unfortunate run against their modern rivals to just 2 wins from their last 13 encounters. It was far from a disheartening display. From the outset, Melbourne brought physical pressure and tactical intent, and despite sitting 14th on the ladder, they matched it and in many respects outplayed the league leaders, dominating key indicators such as contested possessions, clearances and inside 50s for large parts of the game. Ultimately, though, it was the same Achilles heel that haunted the Demons' inefficient ball use inside forward 50 and costly skill errors under pressure. Max Gorm once again underlined why he remains the preeminent ruckman of the competition, putting in a commanding display with 43 hitouts, 20 disposals and 6 clearances. His mobility and endurance allowed him to not only dominate stoppages but also influence general play. He won his duel against All-Australian contender 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁𝗀 in most facets, save for one crucial moment in the dying seconds where he skewed a kick across the ground and found Collingwood's Will Hoskin-Elliott and effectively sealed the Pies' win. Ed Langdon was at his disciplined best in a rare tagging role, taking on Nick Daicos with relentless focus. The D's winger, better known for his gut-running and outside link-up play, was instructed to shadow Daicos wherever he went, including to the bench. The ploy worked brilliantly, restricting Daicos to just 7 first-half touches, visibly upsetting the Brownlow fancy and umpire's favourite. While Daicos worked into the game late, the old-school tag by Langdon disrupted Collingwood's ball movement and was one of Melbourne's key strategic successes. 𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀 Pickett was electric, his 3 goals sprinkled with bursts of brilliance and forward pressure that kept the Pies defenders on high alert. He provided the spark the Demons desperately needed in the forward line that otherwise lacked composure and finishing polish. Bailey Fritsch also lifted when it mattered, kicking 2 final quarter goals and assisted as another Melbourne surge into the lead midway through the last term. We won't talk about the play on. Actually, we will because it's coming up later. Stephen May was immense in defence. He shut down Joel and Jamie Elliott, who had been in red-hot form, was vital in keeping the Magpies scoring threat in check. Alongside him, young defender Daniel Turner showed composure beyond his year, further evidence of the Demons' next generation in defence developing under pressure. Despite winning the second half and generating more scoring shots, 21-17, the Demons again failed to capitalise on their territorial dominance. The second quarter inaccuracy, 1-2 from 13 inside 50s, was emblematic of structural issues that has plagued than for years, and too often Melbourne bombed the ball inside 50 without direction, allowing experienced defenders like Howes Moore and Sidebottom to intercept a will. Key moments in the final quarter also proved costly. Jake Melksham's poster from close range, a hasty kick on the run from Fritsch when he had more time, and Colton Tholstrom's long-range shot falling short all contributed to Melbourne missing the opportunity to put the game out of Collingwood's reach. And then came the final play and Gord's ill-fated switch kick. It was a moment of high-risk decision-making under extreme fatigue and pressure, but it gifted Collingwood possession with seconds remaining and became the defining error in an otherwise heroic captain's game. The visible confrontation between Gawn and May after the siren, while unseemly, spoke to the frustration of a side that knew it let a golden opportunity slip. Melbourne's ground level pressure was among the best seen this year. The intensity was unmatched across the home and away rounds so far, and Simon Goodwin's use of Langdon in a hard tag role was a bold coaching move that paid dividends and should be explored more often. The Demons' repeated inability to convert dominance into scoreboard pressure, particularly during momentum surges, remains their greatest limitation. Before the bounce, both clubs and 77,000 plus fans united in celebrating Neil Daniher's extraordinary legacy. The emotion in the stadium was palpable as Gawn embraced Daniher on the boundary during his lap of honour. The significance of the occasion was not lost on the players, and Melbourne's combative performance would surely have made the club legend proud, win or lose. Melbourne may have lost the scoreboard, but they regained something just as valuable, a bit of belief. They went toe-to-toe with the benchmark team in the competition, dominated many of the key stats and showed a steeliness and resilience that has been building since round 6. And while a 1-point loss stings, particularly when it comes off a self-inflicted wound, the signs are there that if the Demons can maintain this level of intensity and address their forward inefficiency, they remain a threat to top 8 sides. However, being the team in the bottom being the best team in the bottom 5 is no consolation prize for me.
There ain't no second prize, says Jimmy.
You want to go over your stats?
Can I just say on Neil Daniher, I found that really, really moving. And I don't know whether I was sitting in Melbourne members area, so it probably a bit skewed. But my sense was it wasn't as angsty as it can be at the game, so at Pies game so far. I don't know if you guys felt the same, and I wondered whether that was to do with the sort of emotion around Neil Daniher. It was touching in a different way than it has been in previous years for me. And I thought that was, although it's crazy to hear the Pies, there was when I was sitting on the members' side wing or the MCC side wing, to hear the wave of booing or whatever from the Pies fan and not being able to work out what the hell they're murmuring about, it was kind of weird. But did you guys feel that in terms of the vibe at the crowd, or is that?
I thought the best part of the vibe about the crowd was when they went silent in that last quarter in particular.
When the chant started, and that's like...
And then it died, that was... look, in all honesty, I think they thought this was going to be an easy kill for them. And when we got within points, even hitting the front at one stage, they went quiet really quickly.
And they were paddling a bit in the last quarter, I reckon. They were running up and down on the spot a bit.
But I think overall in this game, we exposed Collingwood for the Hawthorn showed it last week in the first quarter in particular. If you put sufficient pressure on, particularly their main ball handlers, they really haven't got anything else. And particularly, I won't say he was tagged, but he was a run with role that we'll talk about Langdon on Dacos, but they weren't giving the ball to Dacos because Langdon was always alongside him. He wasn't. So
it was a pretty hard tag, George. You know what it's like.
But he only tackled him 6 times. That's not a hard tag.
Wow.
It was a run with because Dacos gets free and delivers the ball so beautifully with his skills. But if you can't give him the ball in the first place, then you're relying on second stringers.
Definitely, you're definitely right. But it was definitely a hard tag in the first. And what was fascinating is I haven't, because of my mixed emotions about how I feel about the game, I haven't even watched the presser yet. I'll sort of get my head into gear, and so I haven't listened to any media. I haven't even watched the 2 pressers, but I did see something on Demonland about. Goody being asked about the change in umpiring after half time, because I didn't notice it at the ground. Of course, you don't notice when your team is the one not getting paid free kicks against them. But all of the grappling that apparently Langdon was doing on Dacos and then no freeze. And then after half time, there was like how many? He got 6 free kicks or something, didn't he? Or 5 or 6 free kicks. And the inference, if I read it, like it's a bit hard without hearing what Goody's tone was, but the sort of subtext seemed to me from what Goody's comments was, well, I think he said something like, well, I hope that applies to everyone or something.
Yeah.
But, the implication being, well, come on, how can they change so radically at halftime? I think the quote that I read was, do they speak about it at halftime? And I think they're as close as come to a coach questioning what's going on. And it's a bloody valid question. Do they speak at halftime and look at it and go, hold on? And if so, does someone else external come in and say, hey, hold on, you've got to give Dacos a chop out here because he's getting grappled.
Why doesn't Max get that after halftime?
Exactly, yeah. But the other thing that really, really annoyed me is, once again, our rotations. I'll talk about it partly in the forward line, but the commentators for the match noticed it as well. Max Gawn went off 3 minutes in the last quarter. 3 minutes. He's just had a 10-minute break. He comes off at 3 minutes. There were two goals scored, and then he comes back on again and has to run the rest of the last quarter without a break. Why in the hell are we taking Max off after 3 minutes in the quarter? We did the similar sort of thing with JVR against North Melbourne, the same sort of thing. They're not involved in the play. And once again, I'll refer back to Burgess in the grand final in 21, when he came up to Goody and said, he's due for a break, do we take him off now? And the answer was no, he's running, he's important to us. We got back to within 1 point and we take Max off. The momentum was with us. And these are the little things in the game that kill you when you lose by 1 point. If Max had been given a break at the 15-minute mark, that's fine. Okay, but we had the momentum at that stage, and it just takes it apart. And they keep doing this, just following obviously what the computer says, rather than looking at what's happening on the field and where the game is sitting at that particular time. So, we played well enough to beat them. We let ourselves down badly with kicking yet again, but I think we're also letting ourselves down by the way we're managing our players in match. And I'll talk about JVR as well. Exactly the same sort of thing. I don't think we're using our players to best advantage at the right times in the game, but that's sort of an off-field problem that just keeps recurring.
Just Andy, before the stats files, you mentioned that last kick from Gawn. I didn't see any of the hullabaloo between Maxi, and so I'll be interested in your guys' take on it. There's a question about it, isn't it? But
there isn't a question about it. So if you want to talk about it now,
well, just before I do, let's have a chat about it, because I didn't see anything because I didn't look at any meter or anything, but on Demonland again. There was a comment about, and it didn't occur to me at the game because I was so wildly, I had my binoculars on the clock that's in front of the interchange bench, so I could see exactly how much time there was. I basically had it on. I was looking at it every 10 seconds from about the 7-minute mark with 7 minutes to go. And so I knew how long there was to go when Maxi had that free. And someone pointed out on Demonland that Maxi was interviewed somewhere or other, maybe on that Nova show he does or something, that he was called to play on, and that not only was he shocked to be called to be play on, that he had assumed he was going to get a 50. And now that I think back to it, he's right. He had 2 Collingwood players right in his space and he called play on. So, the kick it didn't bother. Yeah, I'm just pleased that he didn't go back and kick the goal, so it was still a 1 point loss, to be honest. But
Max had run off his line, so there was no doubt
but
about
the other 2 players were they were in the zone, and so quote, Maxie said that the umpire called play on, so he hadn't moved. But the thing that if let's say 50 gets paid, and they just that thing about the influence of poor umpiring, 50 metres gets paid. The clock stops. There's 45 seconds to go. The clock stops. The ball gets to inside the square. He can kick 50, 60 metres or a give-and-go handball, and it's deep inside our 50. We've got a chance for a marker or crumbing goal. And that it's just, again, going back to the umpire, just infuriating how influential they're becoming in terms of both the way I enjoy the sport, but more, I'm not blaming the umpires for our loss. I give credit to Collingwood, a lot of credit for how they played. And we had our chances in that last quarter, didn't we, George, to win the game? We should have, arguably should have, could have, whatever. But I'm just sick of the umpires. You just don't know what could happen. The sliding doors moments, that free kick that, how was on earth, how could they pick that free kick against, there were two that really frustrated me. One was the free kick to Howes. The umpire was right in front of that, the controlling umpire, and I had my binoculars on that contest. In the distance, I could see the non-controlling fourth umpire was 5 metres inside the boundary, so a good 40 metres away from that contest, and overruled the umpire who was right in front of it. And my understanding of that scenario is that they only overruled for a howler because the other umpire is unsighted. Now, the umpire couldn't have been unsighted. There was nothing impeding his view of the contest. And the other one was similarly, it was even worse, was 𝗟𝗱𝗀𝘁𝗰 not getting a free kick where he got pushed in the back, and the free kick was for blocking. I don't know if you noticed that. It was in 2-on-1 contest. How does the Demon player get done for blocking, let alone the push he got in the back? They scored a goal from that play. We didn't touch the ball from memory, and they scored a goal. We get the free kick that we should have got, and 𝗟𝗱𝗀𝘁𝗀𝗁's kicking it deep inside 50 for us to have a scoring opportunity. There's potentially a 2-goal swing right there. We only lost the game by a point. It's becoming beyond a joke, and we've been talking about it on the podcast now for years. Sorry, Andy.
I'm just no. While you're doing
clearly,
that,
I haven't processed the umpiring yet.
I'm just
what was your take on the Max thing?
Well, I've got some audio. It's Tom Morris, your good mate Tom Morris, on with Gary Lyon with the explanation of what happened. There's really nothing in it. I'm just trying to find that now, and I'm struggling. So just keep talking amongst yourselves.
Look, I thought it was as was explained by Goody in his press conference. It was two blokes, two competitors having a go at each other. At the end of the day, the kick was an awful kick. Should never have even attempted that. It should have gone straight down the line, even looking for at the very worst, looking for an out of bounds, and we still would have had 40 seconds to get the ball up the other end. You don't kick it into the middle. But Max was tired at that stage. He was exhausted. The kick only went 25 metres, for crying out loud. The next Melbourne player, just from where I was looking, was probably well outside 50. So what are you trying to kick? Yeah, sure enough, May was well within his rights to say that was a bloody stupid thing to do. Max goes, okay, well, yeah, it's done. Let's get over it and we move on. So that's all it is. They're just competitors. That's the nature of sport.
All right, here's
what did Steve May say to Max Gawn? Steve May said to Max Gawn words to the effect of, did you only think there was 10 seconds left? So the equivalent for me is if you run yourself out in cricket and you walk off and you're frustrated and the first thing someone says to you is, oh, did you think there was a run there? Of course you're going to be tense in that moment. So Gawn was frustrated for 3 reasons. First of all, he thought...
at himself, I'm sure.
At himself. He thought that the Collingwood players encroached over the mark. As a result, he thought it should have been a 50-metre penalty.
Yep.
And then he was frustrated himself for butchering it and kicking in the middle of the ground. So the timing of Steve May is what he said is more the issue. It was more ill-timed curiosity than anything else.
So nothing abusive.
Nothing abusive, nothing aggressive. And then Steve May was trying to clarify. He just wanted to know, which he has conceded to people around him in the time since, that it was poorly timed, but there was nothing aggressive about it.
Yeah, hardly the...
Here we go. Here we go. What do you got?
The hurt feelings and whatever else.
The media beat up.
Rabbited on about
There's
last
a fracturing.
night.
There's a fracturing of the relationship there.
No fracturing.
There's no love there. Well, that's pretty innocuous. If that's the timing's out, but it's innocuous.
Yeah, well, if that is true, and I'm assuming
it is true.
You're right. Well, then now people can make their judgments. The timing is the poorest thing about it. What was said was very, very tough.
He just wanted to know, but in that moment, when Gawn is tense, you just need to leave him for a couple of minutes.
Correct.
Yeah, like you can understand.
Give me a
gone to
spell.
action. It
Two
looks
things
worse,
there,
but
Morris.
he's just.
Oh, yeah, I know for sure. How do you know that, Tom Morris?
I don't
Because
know.
Max Gordon told me, yeah, right. Like he's going to tell you the bloody truth. Give me a spell. I'm going to use that again somewhere. I've got to find the context for it. Ill-timed curiosity. Sorry, sweetheart. I know I'm pushing, but it was just some ill-timed curiosity on my part. May has got form. And I take the point that two blokes are competitive, but I actually take a bit of different view. May's got form in this space, and he should pull his head in, I reckon. And it's Maxi. It's like, yeah, it was a poor kick, for God's sake. Pull your bloody head in. I get the argument, two competitive bloke. Well, one competitive bloke. It was Maxi. If you look at the thingo, it's basically May's gone him. So ill-timed curiosity, he wasn't asking a question, what time's the train to bloody Laverton? He was having a go at it. As the body language looked like two blokes having a go at each other. Well, one bloke having a go at a club legend. So, yeah, I mean, but at
the end of the day, there's not
deal.
a fracturing of the relationship.
No,
and
of course not.
The
I
media's trying to
haven't heard
make
any
it
of that stuff, but it's still.
into
And
a
how
lot
many
more.
times in the game do you see players complaining about you should have kicked it to me because I was out in the open?
Yeah. Look, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. Just to say that he's got form in that space, Steve May, and it sort of seems inverse. Like he played a brilliant game, didn't he? He was awesome. So back to his best, and but yeah, he's got form for sure.
All right, stats, Ben. Take it away.
All right, so. It's a bit different today. Before I jump in, just about Andy, I just really enjoyed our chat with Jeff White last week. So big thanks for setting that up. And
not a problem. And if anyone who didn't listen to the first half of, or 3/4 almost of our podcast last week was with Jeff White talking about his venture First Juice. He also, I don't know if you saw, he did a breakdown of our midfield dominance this week.
I saw that on. It's interesting. You should rate. I saw that you linked it in Demonland. I haven't looked at it yet. I will. I haven't been able to bring myself to watch any media yet. So I'll know when I've recovered psychologically from this game, when I can start watching the presses and that stuff. So I will watch that. It's interesting though, because midfield dominance, yes, in the number of clearance win, but I thought that was a big factor in why we didn't win, was because we didn't convert enough of that into scores. We got territory, and territory is important, but it's not about that. It's not about the raw number. But so thanks for that. That was great. And one of the takeaways, just before I say that, I also wanted to, all I've read is Demonland. And so just a shout out to Demonland as a forum too, Andy, and all the work you've done over the years and everyone who's contributed to it. But it's just such a great source of information. There's some really clever people on there. So a lot of there's been really interesting things in the stats file thread this week. A really interesting post from someone I hadn't seen before, William, and a couple from Adam the God, talking about our goal kicking, which is looking at that and whether fatigue and fitness plays, what role does that play in it. William noting that it's one of our worst seasons for a long time in terms of our accuracy. But also a big shout out to the training information from ghostwriter Harvey Wallbanger and Kev Martin, some terrific information. So shout out for them, because it's a must read after every training session. What the link to Jeff White was that sort of his point about the data. Like, he's clearly not a stats man, but his point's right about like stats. And so one of my things that frustrates me with how, for instance, David King and the media uses stats, Joey Montagna's a little bit better, is they use the data and the numbers as an explanation in of themselves. When they're not, they're using a sort of medical analogy. The stats are the symptoms. They're not the descriptor of the cause or the underlying what's going on. They're not the diagnosis. They're just the indicators. And so that, for me, was a bit of the sort of like that thought from Jeff White, and it sort of occurred to me, I mean, that's exactly how I use the stats, is trying to understand the game. And so I wanted to, and that's hopefully what I do with the stats files, but I wanted to sort of re-emphasize that the stats are sort of its purpose in the way I look at them is to help describe what happened and help understand what happened. So, in the spirit of that, I thought I'd sort of shift this week to a little bit of a different emphasis on what the stats tell us about why we nearly won the game. I'll talk to them and about what the stats tell us about why we actually lost the game rather than go through the sort of good, bad. But before I jump into them, as I say, to do every week, the player ratings, I've just got to work out and make sure 100% before I go into these. These are the correct player ratings because I don't want to quote last week's player ratings. Just give me a sec. Cut and paste error.
Preparation is the key.
It
young
is right,
listeners
but
out.
no. Just want to check. Just talk amongst yourself while I double check.
Yeah, so if you do want to listen to that Jeff White interview, the first part of our show last week, don't be put off by the fact that it's tacked onto our St Kilda game podcast. If you want to hear a good chat with a fantastic analyst of the sort of the rucking contest and other aspects of our great game, Jeff White's YouTube channel, First Juice, is a great resource, and it was a great chat with him. So check it out.
It was far better than listening to us talk about the St Kilda game.
Yes.
Good now. Thank you, Andy. That was very good padding there. I have got it right. The reason I thought I might not have is because I only cut and paste this. I haven't really sort of drilled down on this. Who would have you thought our best, highest rated player was? Anyone? Ferris?
Not Max.
He was second. Track was our highest rated player, 20.2. And I guess maybe I think I judged Track too harshly, I think, because, he was phenomenal. Maybe I'm sort of overly critical or, I've got that confirmation bias around his kicking. I mean, he's a phenomenon, isn't he? And I said at the ground, if he could kick like side bottom, he'd be the best player in the AFL by a country mile. And so he was our top rated player, consistent across. He had a great third quarter, 7.7, 20.2, 20 being considered an All-Australian game, as I talked about, 84% game time. Max Gawn, 17.6. Maxie had his second game. What a season he's having. He's an absolute lock for what will be his 8th All-Australian. Is that right? Am I right in saying that?
Yes, 8.
That's correct.
This young fella, I think I'm very pleased now that I said that he'd be the breakout player for the season, albeit I didn't think he'd be playing in defence. Daniel Turner was our third highest rated player, 14.9, 87% game time, consistent across all 4 quarters. In terms of his output, his reading of the ball is beautiful to watch. He's got a great pair of hands, and the thing that, as I mentioned last week, the thing that he's got on, for instance, T-Mac, is he's genuinely quick. He covers the ground quickly, and he makes quick decisions, and then gets across the contest. I just love watching him play at the moment. Tommy Sparrow had his best game for a while. He was our 5th highest rated player, 14.9, and a big shout out to this fella. I thought he was awesome. His brain fade notwithstanding, Fritter, 92% game time, which is huge, isn't it, for a player who has just been going up to the last few weeks. So, there's probably a bit in that in terms of his fitness level. It probably points to, he's in the mid-80s mostly. So 92% game time. And what was most impressive, if you look at his numbers, he started with negative 1.8, so didn't have a great first quarter, 3.5, 2.1. His last quarter, when the game was there to be won, 10.5 player rating points in that last quarter for a score of 14.3. Fantastic performance from him. Hopefully looking back on it won't be coloured. It was unbelievably poor decision to play on. I actually turned away, so I didn't see what had happened, and I looked up. I said to my mate, well, what the hell just happened then? Because I just assumed he was going to go back and kick it, and it wasn't just a matter of not playing on, is that you go back, take the full 30 seconds.
The 30 seconds, that is...
but also it's what Cos did the previous week, is that not only do you take your full 30 seconds and maximise the likelihood you kick the goal, is that on the off chance you miss that goal, you surely would have got it from there, hopefully, is that 30 seconds takes time, it sucks time out of the clock. It would have given us, a 7 point, or we behind, I can't remember.
Yeah, we would have been, over a goal, they would have needed 2.
Yeah, but it also meant that then everyone can set up behind the ball and protect against the kick out. And so because we played on, they were able to move it so that, but a great game by Friedrich's best game for the season. And, kudos for Goody for bringing him back in and sticking with him. He cops a lot of whack for his selections, Goody, but Frida's done the right thing by him and he's really on an upward trajectory. So good on him. And Clayton was our next player. 12.8, good game, high possession, but he's he really is a hammer, isn't he? 𝗍𝗲 was our next player, so I thought that was interesting. Down the bottom, I think one of the factors in this game is I think we were set for it, but there was real evidence of the young players starting to paddle a little bit. I thought Langford didn't have a great game in some respects. He had a good last quarter. Xavier Lindsay, he was subbed out, but he was negative 1.6 off, so he didn't have a great game, and he just looked exhausted to me. And interestingly, this is where you get the weakness of player ratings. Our second lowest rated player was Eddie Langdon, but arguably one of our most influential players. So the other player that is a bit of a worry for me is Caleb Windsor, fourth lowest rated player, and Pet's only just above him. He looks like he needs a break.
Wasn't he the sub?
Who?
Caleb Windsor.
Yeah. So, he was a sub. So 1.91. So 3.3. Yeah, I mean, that's not too bad, I guess. So you're right, he was the sub. So, but he does.
And interestingly, when he was brought on, he was put on the wing.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought he was actually a pretty
Lindsay.
good sub because he can play back, he can go to the wing. Yeah, and he was a straight swap for Lindsay, wasn't he? So, yeah, but he just worries me a little bit. Like he's the classic second-year blues, isn't it, really?
It's just the nature for the young guys. Langford looked completely shot to me, particularly in the last quarter. Lindsay, I don't think was looking as bad, but Langford could not keep up with his man. It's not surprising. It's middle of the season. He's 18 years old.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Lindsay's the same. It's not surprising.
Yeah, so. No, I think you're right, and I agree. He looked a bit slow, didn't he? He's not super quick anyway. He's a good kick. Those smart.
He's a great kick. Great smarts. Great kick. But
great smarts. That's the thing. He kicked a kick where he delayed it deliberately because
he weights them nicely.
Yeah, and he sort of angled it back in. If he'd just done what so many of our players do and just put it to boot like bloody Oliver, he would have coughed it up. But he delayed it long enough, took the hit, and sort of kicked in on the angle to our forward line when we're kicking to the city end. So, but you're right, George. He was paddling. That's for sure. The other player that worries me, I don't know, worries me is the right word, but Judd McVie was our third lowest rated player, and he hasn't really found the form that he did last year. I mean, it's really hard, isn't it? Like players coming back from injury, they usually, you think Langdon took full 12 months, it felt like, to get back to his best after his rib injuries. So what the stats tell us about why we nearly won. So I think the number one thing for me was our contested possession. So Goody clearly had I think, really fascinating. It was a fascinating game tactically. As I said, I haven't watched anything or watched the replay, so forgive me. All of my thoughts around this are a little bit all over the shop, but I thought he did a great job in the box. Not George's thing about the management of the players notwithstanding, had a clear plan, had a really, really clear plan. I think he's doing that a lot this year. He's shifted his way he coaches from being Melbourne is the DNA, everyone else reacts to the way we play, to a combination. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean in this game, but I thought he had a really, really good game tactically. The way we used Langdon, I thought, was clever as well. Got in his head, that's for sure. Absolutely got in his head. So our biggest thing about why we nearly won, I think, was our contested possession. So we were +3 for hard ball gets. We were +6 for loose ball gets. Amazingly, this is in our defensive 50, so all in our defensive 50. We took 4 contested marks back there, +3. In terms of our forward 50, we were +8 for loose ball gets, -2 for hard ball gets, but +8 for loose ball gets. Post clearance, and as I've talked about, Hardwick has often said it's the most important stat in footy, certainly for the way he plays, and I think Goody is very much a Hardwick acolyte. We're +1 for hardball gets, which showed it's pretty good at 11 to 10. So the Pies were pretty hard at it. We're +10 for loose ball gets, post clearance, 15 marks post clearance, so to 9 +6 real for contested marks. I thought our contested marking, except inside our forward 50, was just brilliant. And Maxi's he just seems to have gone up a level with his marking. Pre-clearance, we were +1 for hardball gets, +7 for loose ball gets. So a really, really impressive performance from contested possessions. And just a reminder about contested possessions, it does my head in because commentators still conflate disposals and contested and possessions. They're completely different things. Disposals are kicks and handballs, and possessions are things like loose ball gets, hard ball gets, marks, those things. And they constantly conflated, but they're different things. So Collingwood rank 13th in the AFL for contested differential. We were I think it was -27 in the end. It's the worst differential for the Pies this season. So it was a really impressive performance by us in that space. Tackles inside 50. Goody's put a huge emphasis on this. Was 14 to 7 +7 for tackles inside 50. Really, really excellent job. I talked about it. I've been talking a bit about this on Demonland a little bit, is that really the footy's changed so much. Is contested marking inside 50s just don't, they're not taken very often anymore. The gone are the days of the big pack marks, unfortunately. It would have been great if we got a couple in that last quarter. 14 to 7 tackles inside, 14 to 7 tackles inside 50, I reckon is super impressive because I don't think we did a very good job of bringing the ball to ground. As you noted, I think, Andy, was it you or maybe it was George, noted how dominant Howe was back there. Given how many intercept marks they took and how infrequently we were able to bring the ball to ground, 14 tackles inside 50, super impressive. The other area was good, and this is where it's good and bad, I think was really important in terms of getting territory, but where it was bad is I don't think we really took advantage of how well we did in this space. Total clearances, we were +10, 39 to 29. Centre clearances +9. So around the ground, only +1, 23 to 22. So we dominated out of the centre, 16-9. So just on the raw numbers of clearances, pretty impressive, 10 more than them. And we're not so good is that we just didn't really take advantage of that on the scoreboard. It certainly helps with territory, but, that's an area that definitely Goody would have not been thrilled at. This was a really interesting one. First possession to clearance percentage, 88.6% of the time we got the first possession to clearance. They're 69, so +19 almost. So that's really shows how effective we were with our clearances. This one for me was the big one. And like everyone raves about Collingwood, the way they move the ball, blah blah blah. And that the transition game. But I think, when you watch them, they're actually playing very much a Melbourne style game from 22-23, I think, the red and blueprint to some degree. And because and this is where Goody coached really well. So everyone talks about their transition game. They're not playing the way they were in 23, whereas other teams are now playing the way Collingwood were in 23. And so points from defensive half, though, still is a super important data point for in terms of the transition game. 70%, I can't remember, 70% is scores from the back half across the AFL. We've been averaging against us this season. It's been a huge problem for us. Last week in particular, I think from memory, I think I'm right in saying the Saints scored 67 of their points from the back half. So we've been averaging just a tick under 41 points opponents are scoring against us in the back half. Collingwood, the best transition side in the AFL, arguably, or maybe with the Cats and Crows, only scored 24 points from their back half on what was essentially a dry day. So that is just a phenomenal defensive performance from that. And I put a lot of that down to Goody and how some of the tactical stuff he did. So we're averaging 25.8. Goody would have liked more score from the back half from us as well. We scored 28. it's above our season average still, 25.8. I'm sure Goody would have wanted more. But the main one is that we kept them to only 24 points from their back half. Phenomenal effort, I reckon. The stats that tell us why we lost, a lot is made of our kicking and our missed shots for goals. I don't actually think it was that bad, our shots for goal. We missed a couple of crucial ones, obviously. But that's reflected in our expected score. So our expected score was their expected score was 65. So I'm looking at the numbers of my expected score. So the expected scores were it wasn't so bad for us, and it was fantastic for them. So our kicking wasn't as bad for goal as it was. It was our field kicking that really let us down. Our score sources, as I said before, we didn't score enough from our stoppage dominance. I thought that was a big factor. And I'll speak to the main factor in a sec, but centre bounces, we only scored 14 points from them from our stoppage, so +7 only from centre bounce, and it was 0. We both scored 20 from stoppages around the ground. So despite our dominance, we're only +7 for scores from stoppages. So, a couple more goals, we win the game. Probably arguably the big one, and I don't think it was really to do with the Pies pressure. It was to do with our poor kicking and disposals. That's where it really hurt us. Our kicking is scores from turnover. We scored 30 points from turnover. They scored 45. That's a 15 difference. That's the ball game right there. That we scored 30 points from turnover. Our season average is 44. 45 for the Pies isn't so bad. We've been averaging 48.8, so it's not like they went to town. I don't put a lot of stock in the disposal efficiency or the kicking efficiency stat. I just think there's too many variables. But in this case, I think it really tells the tale. Is our overall disposal efficiency was, so that's, I presume it's handball when kicking together, 66.9% to their 76.8. So, that's and AFL average is 72. So again, down. But the big one is this one. Like, this is really all of the other stats I was saying, particularly the turnover. I think this was really the key reason we lost, and why I said that we're not a top 4 side and we're in that 4 to 10 is our kicking efficiency, 57.7 to 73.1, 15.4 difference. This AFL average is 66. Again, it was a perfect day for footy in some respects. It was a pretty heavy ground, but it didn't. I don't think that affected it that much. 57.7. There were a lot of butchering of the ball. In some ways, it's remarkable that we only gave up 45 points on turnovers, so given some of the kicking. That to me was really the key reason we lost, was exactly that. And there was one bit of play that I think summed up the difference in the two sides in terms of exactly that kicking ability. I'm pretty sure it was Dacos who kicked to Cameron, and then Cameron kicked, beautifully weighted kick to Cameron's advantage. It was a marking contest, but it was kicked to Cameron's advantage, and I think he actually outpointed Langford. Beautiful kick beautifully weighted kick to the boundary to 𝗦cie, 45 metres. What's his name? Melk had a shot from almost exactly the same spot. 𝗦cie, goes back and drills it from 45 metres. That was, to me, I thought that was the goal.
Absolutely flushed it, and we're missing from straight in front.
Who? 𝗦cie.
𝗦cie from the boundary, absolutely straight through the middle.
Petty had a shot from exactly the same spot.
Yeah, I mean,
out of bounds.
That's a 1 in 10 shot, or 1 in 8 shot. But it was just those combination. That was the first kick weighted to Cameron's advantage, which we just do not do. It was doing their head in. Like Petty, I thought, didn't do a great job in bringing the ball to ground, but so often the ball wasn't kicked to his advantage. Just got to kick it like half a metre one side of him, so he's got a chance to control where the ball drop is, and so there was that kick, and then the lead to 𝗦cie, and he just flushed it, didn't he? It was like, it was a dagger. You mentioned Jeremy Howe, so I think I'm spewing that he's not still at the club. He had 26 disposals, 12 contested possessions, 14 intercepts, 580 metres gained, but it was the 14 intercepts that I think was massive factor in this game. And I think part of it wasn't like, that's the whole point. You're always going to kick to a contest. It was really one-on-one. Goody set that up. And that way. And I thought it was really, really fascinating the way Goody did that. But we just needed to bring the ball to ground a bit more. We'll talk about it in a little bit. JVR has dropped, he's just not playing to the level he was, and it's really hurting us up forward. But a terrific game by Howe. He took a beautiful mark that he couldn't, no knock on the Melbourne player. I think it might have even been JVR. A really critical mark at one point that just is such a good mark, one of the best marks of the footy I've seen ever. Now, the last bit that's curious, I haven't mentioned pressure, and it was a really interesting game. Wheelo he gets the pressure rating from Herald Sun, and so you can't get any data. There's nowhere to find unless you've got champion data license of some sort to get the pressure rating. So totally reliant. So a huge thank you to Wheelo for doing this. Totally reliant on the Herald Sun because they've obviously got a license to print it. I actually was so confused by this. I asked him a question whether they're right, and he double checked, and it was. I heard Jeremy Howe interviewed after the game, and he was talking. It was a finals-like pressure. You guys talked about how great the pressure was. I talked about how fantastic our contested possessions were, and so I was flat out shocked by these numbers. And again, I asked Wheelo to check them. Is our match pressure was 161? Their match pressure was 186, 25 more than us, and in the first quarter, it was 161, 201 to them. We were minus 35 in that first quarter for pressure differential. Minus 14 in the second quarter, 170 to 184. Minus 19 in the third quarter, 159 to 178. And in the last quarter, when I thought we ran the game out pretty well, and we were right in the game, as we've talked about, was 146 to 183, minus 37 pressure points. And that's the one I specifically asked Wheelo about. So a minus 25 overall. And I was really, really flummoxed by it. And so going back to my point about the stats, aren't they're not an explanation in of themselves. And so I was, what does that mean? What does that say? And I think it speaks to the tactics that Goody used, because they're really incredibly anomalous number. I've said on the podcast a few times that it's the most, it's the best correlation between winning and losing. It's not a direct correlation, of course, is the pressure rating. So, and I reckon it would be almost a direct correlation of them if like a differential of any more than 10. I reckon it'd be 95% of games, the team that if you get a 10 pressure rating differential that you're going to win 90-odd%. I'm guessing because, again, there's no access to that data. And so I wondered, I put in that stats file thread, I wonder what that's about. What would that be? And my suspicion is that it was partly how Goody set the game up. And we played in a really curious way. So we played really deep, our defensive really deep. So the Pies are the slowest team in the AFL for moving the ball on after a mark or a free kick. By a big margin, apparently, and we're top 3 for moving the ball quickly, and we didn't move the ball quickly this time. We allowed them, this is how I saw the game, we allowed them to take as much time as they wanted, and we set up really deep in our defence and stretched the game. And I think that it helps explain that setup. I think that helps explain how effective we were at stopping the Pies transitioning from the back half. Again, on a pretty good day for footy, it wasn't raining, there was no rain during the game. They only scored 24 points from their back half. This is the team everyone lauds for their ability to transition the ball from the back half. They just could not do it. And it played into both teams' hands in terms of intercepts. Our intercept marks were almost the same, despite the sort of easy to focus on Howe's performance. We took as many intercept marks as they did almost. May was brilliant. He was just fantastic one-on-one. There was one-on-one contests all over the defensive thing. There were very few that need for a third man in. And I wonder, I was really curious about the pressure rating. So the Pies, I think that part of it is the Pies chip it around their back line, and we chose not to. It wasn't because like the Saints, where I think we were fatigued and couldn't. I think we chose to not close up like we normally do and really press up on them. So that means that we didn't cause as many turnovers as indicated by the turnover stats. So we didn't try and force a turnover. So those turnovers where you get up and force a turnover, it involves a physical contact. That's the way you accrue the most pressure points if there's physical contact. But even the act of corralling and stopping them and moving them accrue them. But I think we allowed them to chip it around. And I think they had 44 marks in the last quarter. They really did chip it around. And we didn't try to pressure up. So we didn't accrue many pressure points. And as I said, the Pies don't play on very often from the mark. So therefore, that we're allowing them, when they're holding it and moving it around, chipping it around, is that we didn't accrue pressure points that way. So I just thought that was a really weird data point, and I think probably it's the weirdest one in terms of the pressure rating I've seen, in terms of how it didn't describe how hard we were at the contest. Our tackle numbers were up, so were theirs. Really interesting. And I thought Goody had a fantastic tactical battle, and it was a sort of a combination of what it meant was we were bombing it in a fair bit, because it turned into a fairly straight line game in many ways. We were forcing them. Think about how few times they crossed the ball in that game, how they basically never went to the corridor at all. I think one of their goals was via the corridor. So we really forced them to kick it to max. We really forced them to kick down the line. It was a one-on-one game, and I suspect that those pressure ratings are sort of a symptom of that tactical style that Goody took to this game, which, again, going back to my point, I think Goody is really coaching differently this year. He's coaching our way. This is the way we want to play, but he is changing his tactics week to week based on the opponents in a way that he hasn't done since 2017 and 2018. And even he didn't do it so much then. He was trying to implement that fast transition game. So really fascinating, I reckon, in terms of what the data says, and also the way Goody's coaching. Kudos to Goody for that. Maybe not so much for his management of the players, George, in terms of the on and off the bench.
It's probably not.
Was Cos, wasn't he? Cos was stuck.
Cos was stuck on the bench for
10 minutes in the last.
10 minutes. Yeah, and I don't think it's much.
No, that's not Goody.
Yeah, Goody's not. Yeah, it's who's sitting in front of a computer screen with their head down. Unfortunately, not what's going on the field in front of them.
Yep. All right. Well, let's get into some listener questions, and we're going to start with the thing that's made every D supporter pull their hair out this weekend, and that was the umpiring. Clintosaurus says, dare I mention the umpiring? Yes, you dare. Radish D says, as far as the umpiring goes, why doesn't the club have the guts to have a dig at the AFL for allowing this standard? Yes, they are likely fines involved, but it would show the club that, we care enough about this to make noise and spend more money on it. Is there any form of protest or comment that the club can make that would show that a lot of the smaller clubs have had enough of the quality of umpiring, and the AFL must make plans to improve? We should make the AFL address it, change the storyline to being about the AFL's mismanagement of its own game. Monoculus says, whilst it is devastating to lose to any team by one lousy point, it is far worse than when it is to Collingwood. The umpiring was the worst and most biased that I can remember. Travy14 says, mostly a game versus the black, white and green. I'm not usually one to jump on the umps, as they have just been horrible across the board this year, but frees like the one against Milk in that marking contest can't happen, which they kicked a goal from. Buckneked says, Gord, the umpiring is unacceptable, but we cost ourselves this one. Rostar says, I'm never one to blame the umpires for a loss, but come on, that was horrendous. We have would have made it all the sweeter to pip them for the win, but now I just look like a sore loser if I mention the umpires. Red and Bluebeard says, lots of things rankle me about that result, but one that sticks in my craw more than most is that Moore, in my humble opinion, should be cited for pushing Melksham into that contest with Howe. What do the panel think? D Positive says, finally watch the replay, and while umpiring to me seemed to show Pies getting more soft frees, the inconsistent nature of the adjudication is the biggest issue. Spirit of Norm Smith says, umpires, wow, we have $1 billion industry and part-time umpires, ridiculous. Let the AFL have it with 2 smoking barrels. A rant is warranted. The umps were so bad, so biased towards the Pies, the 50-50 calls all went their way. And I've got to say, for me, it really is, as they mentioned, the inconsistency that really grates me. The state of my voice on Monday night and most of Tuesday is proof of that. And I can live with the occasional soft free kick, but it's the ones that you don't get for almost identical situations that frustrate me the most, and that insufficient intent rule remains the worst change in recent years. The free against Sparrow, which happened right in front of me, was completely...
You're triggering me, Andy.
Well, I just want to say something. It's completely against the spirit of the rule. He actually made a genuine attempt to keep the ball in play and move it forward. And ironically, if he had simply...
He was kicking it to the Melbourne player.
That's right. If he had simply let it go out, insufficiently intent, he probably would have been... he wouldn't have been penalised.
No,
like if he had taken the ball over.
About that was one. It was so like no, tone deaf is the right phrase, but it was so exactly for that reason. It was literally the opposite of insufficient intent. He was desperately trying to keep it in instead of doing which it's the thing. One of the things that frustrates me most about that freak. The actual rule free kick is what it happens 20 to 25 times a game. If you watch it, is that what most players would do in that circumstance is pick the ball up and take the tackle
walk walk it over the line,
which is deliberate.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what I was saying.
That's what the rule plays. It's
you know what I mean?
It's insufficient attempt. So pick up the ball with the sole purpose of being tackled in order to go over the line, which by definition is deliberately, it's the opposite to I'm trying to keep it in play.
That is
he
why
was trying to keep it in play.
That is why the rule
as you say, the inconsistency is, again, almost in the same spot. So therefore it was the same bloody umpire. Dacos handballs it a good metre over the Pies player's head, clearly making no effort to keep the ball in play. He gambled towards the boundary for a start, and this genius disposal, who's one of the best footballers in the AFL, misses a bloke in front of him like a metre in front of him by probably further in the air than the bloke was in front of him. It was unbelievable. That inconsistency is it is so frustrating. And then don't get me started on, I read today on Demonland that Lindsay got fined for tripping.
He did, and think of that, the
what's his name from Hawthorn, not only did we not get a free kick, no penalty.
Why couldn't they have gone back? Everyone knew that it was a trip and should have been a free on the day, and all right, they missed it, it didn't get a free. But why wasn't the guy reported for tripping?
Much more blatant tripping. And it wasn't even a trip. It was a tough, it slipped down.
Yeah, he pulled his leg. And just as for the push on 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁, it was absolutely ridiculous. He should have been, obviously, rewarded the free kick. Probably cost us a scoring opportunity.
Well, it certainly did. 𝗟𝗂𝘁𝗁 was the next one in line to the goal. Yeah. So
George, what's your take?
George goes on that free. Every year there's a new thing that the AFL bring in always. The last 4 years, I've got no doubt in my mind that this is deliberate. The AFL no interest in fixing this problem, and it drives me nuts because fans are hating it, and we're supposed to be the people. It's supposed to be our game, not the bloody AFL. Their job is stewards. They're stewards of the game, and every single year the same thing happens. At the beginning of the year, there's a crackdown on something, and at the middle of the year, it completely goes away, and there's the mid-season controversy about umpires, and it fills the bye weeks. And at the beginning of this year, the big controversy was what? The big controversy was tunnelling. We've got to get this out of the game. Someone's going to get hurt. Didn't Layla broke his jaw because he was tunnelled?
Not just the tunnelling, the pushing of players.
That's what I mean. So the tunnelling for the pushing in the back underneath, which is exactly what Moore did. Why wasn't he reported, let alone not a free kick being paid? Why was he not reported? That was dangerous what he did. 𝗟𝗂𝘁𝗁 was completely off balance. And he could have hurt, I forget the Collingwood player. Howes, was it?
Howes, yeah.
He could have got hurt as well. It was unbelievable. It was so evident. I'd never thought, you have a howler where you turn over like a VRR system, but I don't know whether it would work. But top of mind, something where captains have the opportunity for 1 a game or 2 a game or 3 a game, because it was so obviously a poor decision that it was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable.
And, that's why we have supposedly 4 umpires on the ground. One of them should have been, even no matter how far away he was, because I could see it from the other side of the ground. So it's at least 200 metres away from it. It was blatantly plainly obvious what had happened there, and yet there would have been an umpire who was much closer than me, should have been able to go, no, that was a push in the back. And that's also...
as I said before, the free kick was for blocking.
Yeah.
Blocking. It was a 2-on-1 contest. Who's he blocking?
Yeah.
For who? He's blocking for what? The imaginary person who's coming third man into the contest? There was no third man in from a Demon perspective, or fourth man in. It was just really, and I think the critical thing is, again, how it influences games is clearly the Collingwood fans were influencing them. Like, there's no question. I don't even want to countenance a conversation that they don't take into crowd noise. 11-4 in the first quarter it was. 11-4. And, of course, they always even up stupid ones. 11-4. It was unbelievable.
And there was, during the third quarter, we hadn't had a free kick until very late into the quarter. For that quarter.
And then they give dead time free kicks and it ends up sort of getting somewhere level. 11-4. It shaped the whole first quarter, how that quarter looked, was influenced by that free kick count, including that shocker of against Sparrow.
Yeah.
So frustrating.
It wasn't just, I'll start talking about it. It wasn't just 11-4. We actually had 2 free kicks in the first minute of that quarter. So for the remainder of that quarter, we got 2 free kicks to their 11.
So after that 11, after 2 minutes, 11-2.
Yeah, it was after a minute. Yeah,
unbelievable. After a minute, 11-2. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. The Sparrow one was ridiculous for me because the ball actually went past 2 players as well. When
absolutely.
So just... If he'd managed to get it within range of those 2 players, supposedly it wouldn't have been deliberate. But it was just plainly wrong. The other annoying one for me, I think was a 50 metre that was given against McVie because he was stepping back to go outside 5.
It was against Lindsay, and it was clear. It was on the other side of the ground. It was clear he didn't hear the stand thing. You could see.
Yeah. When you got 80,000 people screaming in the stand. But he didn't have the opportunity to stand. That was the worst of it. He as soon as he got to the mark, he was moving backwards. The umpire had called it effectively before he'd even called out stand.
And it's in a close game, 70 whatever it was points each. It is such an outsized penalty, isn't it? To put the guy within 20 metres. Well,
they scored a goal from that. So one of their 2 goals. But back to the original point of who is it, Radish D, why don't we complain? Because firstly, the media is not allowed to complain about it. There is no mention, even on the broadcast. You'll hear the backstepping that goes on between Taylor and Hodge and whoever else. They see something that's so blindingly obvious and they'll step away from it. Oh, no, we can't actually talk about that bad umpiring decision. It doesn't matter whether it's Melbourne or any other team in the competition. So they have got the message. Do not question what is happening on the field about the umpiring. There is no recourse. Even if the club approaches the AFL about it, you will never hear about it because they simply won't publish it. The AFL doesn't want to tell people about it who's complaining. The club's not allowed to talk about it, so we as fans don't hear about it, even if it is going on in the background, unfortunately. But we talk about this constantly, and more and more as I get older, I'm falling into the line of what Binman says, that this is a deliberate ploy to keep media attention. As simple as that.
Create content.
Exactly. Create content. Here we are on the Wednesday. We're still talking about it 3 days after the game, and that's what keeps the industry alive, so to speak. So,
which is all well and good, except for how infuriating it is. It's $1 billion sport. Like, give me a spell. And the other thing, George, just on your point about them not talking about it, it's not. I had to ask the fellow I was sitting with, what's the free kick count? Because it's normally on the scoreboard. It wasn't on the scoreboard once that I saw the stats when they roll them along the bottom at the ground. So they're not even telling people at the ground what does that tell you about the joke? So, I mean, I've probably run out of time now, but I think there's a clear solution. And the solution, and one of the things, George, that really frustrates me is exactly what you said. The media don't talk about it, but they're complicit. like because they're afraid of losing their bloody AFL accreditation. It's this it's like this parasitic relationship between the AFL media and the AFL, and it just drives me nuts. And one of the things that drives me nuts is one of the shows that I've consistently listened to over the years, the footy shows, is the Sunday show with Jake Niall, and I think it's Corbin Middlemass maybe, and maybe Cameron Ling's on it as well. Every single year, at some point this time, when the controversy comes up, someone calls in and has a really well-argued position on, well, they need to go professional. And every single time, they shut it down with the same bullshit. The absolute, oh, no, we couldn't do that. Da-da-da-da. No. They're getting, and it's always shut down based on a completely wrong assumption. It's got a flaw in the argument that's baked into it, which is that the current umpires are earning so much outside playing AFL, you can't change that mix. You can't go professional because it would cost too much money, right? And that's where it's a joke, because it's premised, that notion, the criticism is premised on the same model would imply that you've got a bunch of white-collar workers who are lawyers and architects and whatever earning $250,000 a year, and then they earn good coin on top of it. So therefore, no way could you make it professional because they're making enough money. It's bullshit. That's not who should be umpiring the game. Make it professional. And you could do it all within the same fund. That's the other thing. It would cost too much. It's rubbish. I did a little bit of analysis on the thing. So take this with a grain of salt because it's AI in terms of the analytics or in terms of the research, but I checked the source. Base salary, according to Glassdoor, the estimated total pay range for an AFL umpire is between $121,000 and $130,000 per year, with an average base salary of approximately $127,000. Last year, the top-tier AFL umpires can earn substantial annual incomes. For instance, Matthew Nichols reportedly earned $411,000 in the 2024 season. That's our money. That's our money. We pay for this. And Sean Ryan and Chris Donlan each earned around $400,000, right? And so the notion that it would cost more to go professional does not hold up to any logical scrutiny, because you could pay a young bloke a base salary of $130,000 or a young woman, I should say, and provide a proper career. That's the base salary. Provide a proper career pathway. Have people who want to, I know young men, and my son would do it, who wanted to be elite sport, didn't make it, and would love to be involved in the AFL, would be love to be earning $140,000, $150,000 with all the bonuses on top that you could get to $200,000. You could make it professional, full-time. Then you could start, it's like a shell game the AFL play. It's like, oh, you can't criticize them because then we won't get umpires. Well, I don't want a lawyer. I don't want a physicist. I want a bloody bloke who's a full-time umpire or a woman who's a full-time umpire who can be called to account. And if they don't perform well, go back to the VFL. It is unbelievable we're still talking about this when it's supposedly an elite sport. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to the sport, I reckon.
Well, someone did ask for a rant, and we got that, so glad. Right, let's move on. Lazy says
the second part, I'm sure, next week.
Lazy says, proud of the boys and their four-quarter effort. The story is unfortunately the same with our lack of cutting edge up forward. The chances were there to win it late, and it's times like this where we're bemoaning our ability to score with entries on days like this. 10 goals from 54 inside 50s isn't enough return. Are we getting enough from our forwards? 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗲 was 14 says, do we even have forwards? Fritsch was better today, but still a shadow of the top five forward he was in 2022-2023. Melksham playing with a busted shoulder. JVR devoid of any confidence. Boggles the mind what happened to him during the off-season. Petty, stop the experiment, please. T-Mac not used. Jeffo NQR just yet. Turner has found his spot in defence, so just leave him there. And at the break of Gorn says, I feel like ever since 2022, Goodwin is still searching for the best forward mix, and we waste chunks of season doing so. In 23, it took us to round 19, but then Petty got injured. In 24, we couldn't find it at all. Surely once Goody thinks we're not going to make finals, we just bite the bullet with Jefferson, JVR and Petty. With 2 talls, we look too short, which I often saw when JVR went in the ruck. Howe was marking everything back there. Adelaide has shown 3 talls up forward can work, and I think we just need to stick to a forward setup and get games into them so we're not wasting half of 2026 trying to find the best mix. Old D says, when are we going to play Jefferson? I'm not a big fan, but in his first game he got 2 goals. In his second he broke his hand in the first quarter. Since then, a couple of good games at 𝗪cie. Why emergency yesterday so he didn't play a game anywhere? Play him or let him go somewhere where they will give him a chance. D Positive says, I'd still give Jeffo some exposure to that level of intensity to see how he handles it. Have suggested he and Frida rotate off the bench as they both seem to play a similar role. So big man, another week and another question mark on our delivery inside 50 and the perfect makeup of our forward line. Do you have concerns and can it be fixed?
I'm actually quite, probably in a range of areas, but I'm quite sort of taken with Hoyne's perspective on this question, not about Melbourne specifically, but basically he reckons forwards are completely overrated. And the next question's interesting that George will speak to is accuracy, composure and delivery inside 50. That's basically Hoyne's position, is that it's about not what happens ahead of the ball. It's about how you move the ball inside 50 and transition the ball and how how you move it in there. Basically, his argument is that you look at all of he uses Carlton as an example. They've got arguably the 2 best forwards in the AFL when they can't kick a winning score.
Yeah.
So Mackay and Curnow both gun forwards better than our forwards. Carlton can't kick doesn't matter. And so he uses them as an example often because the Blues are just moving the ball like treacle and not moving the ball with any fluidity. And so, it's really moot point who's up forward. And you could see when the same is true when the Dogs aren't playing well. Like often, what's his name? What's the full forward's name? Norton. He was horrible the week last time I watched him.
He's horrible most weeks.
Yeah, and so he'd be one of the highest paid forwards in the AFL, I suspect.
Yeah,
so
he is. Yeah, on a 10-year contract.
Yeah, so I'm actually quite like that argument that Hoyne's made for quite a while is I'm starting to agree with it. So I think it's less about our forwards, to be honest. I don't think we had a great game. I think our forwards, I think it's overplayed 2 things that I think that we really miss McAdam. I know that sounds a little bit sort of counterintuitive given he
can't miss what's never really got off the ground.
Maybe what he potentially could have delivered this year. He was in great nick. By all accounts, he was in the best condition he'd been for ages. He's exactly the sort of player we lack up forward. Medium forwards like Elliott, 𝗪cie, Long, who I'd just love to get out of Suns and bring him to Melbourne. I love him. I reckon they're super important in footy at the moment. Like I've banged on about how Brisbane have got, they fall over themselves for those medium-sized forwards, all of their, the players they've got. We don't have, Frida, it can arguably he's that sort of player, although he plays a bit taller. So I think he is huge. That was going to be a big part of the puzzle. We really need a player like that, and maybe he's going to be the answer next year. But I reckon the other 2 big issue for us, and even more so than that, is the form of JVR and to a lesser extent Pets. So Roo kicked 28 goals in 23. He kicked 30 goals last year, so approximately 1.5 goals a game. This year he's kicked 4 goals in his 7 games. He's miles off it. He's just miles off it. I like his rucking, and I think we've got to keep him in the side, but it's a massive factor. I mean, he's kicking 4 goals this season. He's kicked. It's just, that's. I think if he was playing,
he's not even kicking big bags in the 2s either.
Well, he's not kicking. Yeah, maybe kick 4 or 5. Save all the bags.
One of the games, but the others, yeah.
So I think that's been a huge issue. And whilst Petty battles hard, he's not clunking enough of. He's getting some really good one-on-one chances, I reckon. He's just not clunking enough of them. And he's also, a bit better than JVR in this space, but he's not kicking enough goals. He's only kicked 10 goals from his 12 games this season. So our 2 key forwards are going, one at half a goal a game and one, barely a goal a game. And I think that's where our problems lie. I just think you've got to stick with them. Jefferson, I don't like. It's a bit like if we don't improve our ball movement in and kicking to advantage, then it doesn't matter who's up there. I thought Jefferson was really, he'll get his chance. I really liked his competitiveness in the last couple of VFL games. But it's not like we're going to be able to find someone to bring in. I think McAdam will make a big difference. There was talk on Demonland about us targeting a key forward. I don't know. I can't remember who it was. But the form of JVR is a real worry, isn't it, George?
Yeah. I don't blame him totally.
No.
I think we're mismanaging.
He's only 22.
Yeah,
so.
And I think we're mismanaging him in a big way. We'll talk about, in the next section, we're going to talk about delivery inside 50. But this was a classic in this game. It was a classic error yet again. When we go into the game, we've got JVR and we've got Petty as our two tall forwards. And Collingwood will and did have Frampton and Moore and Howes, as defenders. JVR goes into the ruck and that leaves us with one tall forward in Petty playing against effect, and we leave Howes and Frampton free to do what they like. And that's exactly what happened. That's why Howes got 14 intercepts in the game, because he actually had no one on him for the most of the game. JVR was on the ground for 60% of the game, only 60%. Now, if you give him five minutes rucking in each quarter, that means he's only playing in the forward line for 40% of the game. It's not surprising.
14 contests, yeah.
Yeah, it's not surprising that he's just not being played in the forward line, which is where we want him to play. But I said last week we should bring in Jeffo as well, just so it gives us three talls, if nothing else, because one of the talls is going to be in the ruck at some stage.
Though he's not super tall, Jefferson. I mean, it is a bit of a time.
But yeah, we don't. Fullerton down at 𝗍𝗶𝗀𝗰𝘀𝗁 will never be anything for us. So the barrel's pretty empty as far as that's concerned. But I just wish we'd not go into the game conceding to the opposition that we're not going to have a forward line that's going to be competitive. The talls are there, if nothing else, and that's the way the game's played these to bring the ball to ground. Well, it's not going to be brought to ground.
JVR's not doing that. That's where he's not. And then Petty didn't have a good game in this game, bringing ball to ground.
But remember, Frampton's 201 and Moore's 203. We're giving away height to them. They're never going. And unfortunately, when JVR goes in the ruck in left with Petty, you've got Frampton at 201 competing against Fritsch at 188.
Yeah,
that's the scenario that was there before the game even started. And if we continue to do
they've got
it,
a pretty good bloody backline, haven't they?
no
they're the best
doubt.
defense in the AFL at the moment, and
but we know what we're going to get from them before the game even starts. So we're just undermanned in the forward line. We're depending on people further up the ground, and 𝗍𝗄𝗃 in particular. If 𝗍𝗄𝗃 doesn't kick goals, this would have been once again a game a lot different from 1 point loss.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting, like JVR's a kid. And so I said 28 goals in 23, 30 goals last year. Those numbers are as good as any key forward of the last 30 years. So the kid has got serious talent. We know, like if I had a look at Amos's number, Logan McDonald, Amati, Tracy, all of his peers, Cadman, all of them, their improvement isn't linear. All of them have had down periods. Tracy currently is a terrific player, but he had a good season last year, injuries in 23. So I think what we need though is not like Jefferson. I'm happy to bring Jefferson in, and I'm hoping he makes it. I was really curious to see, George, that they played Is it Ketterfield? What's his name? Kentfield up forward.
They finally put him up forward.
And that's what we need, is a really big body up forward. That was the thing, like you make the point about some of Collingwood's, like even Cameron, when he goes forward, they're big boys, aren't they? And so the other thing is they're not using 𝗍𝗀𝗃𝗃 up forward at this stage. No. So that's kind of weird, because you never create a mismatch. And so I wonder whether Kentfield, he's a ways off it, isn't he? And it's really it's a bummer that he got pneumonia, obviously for him, but for us. But that's what we need. I feel like is another really big body up there. AJ is that, but he's another blunt instrument. So I'm hoping Kentfield, maybe he could go up a couple of levels. But I really think we do miss McAdam, or miss a player like McAdam.
Yeah. If we had two Cossies, one to play up forward and one in the middle.
Yeah, I was joking that, we'll talk about Cos, won't we? But I was joking that, I'd pay him whatever just because I love watching him play so much. But there's also the fact that he's our best kick, our best mid, and our best forward.
Yeah.
And he puts bums on seats.
He's box office, isn't he? God, it's just fantastic.
Right, Monocular says, so once again, we shot ourselves in the foot by poor conversion. Both set shots and snaps and delivery into forward 50 was random and poor. An issue that has plagued us for years, yet despite platitudes from the coaching staff, has not been addressed. Wells 11 says, the troubling aspect of the loss for me was that in key moments it was the composure and kicking skills of our senior players that let us down. Tracks miss on the run from 25. Milk set shot hit the post from 20. Clary out on the full in the last. Fritsch plays on and gets caught. Cozzy gives up a 50 and a goal again. And Gawn stuffs up the last-ditch possibility with a kick he never should have taken on and one he'd make about 1 in 30 times. All of the above played really wonderful games. I'm not criticising their effort, but I am criticising their composure when it counts. They are our on-field leaders. I don't think you can teach composure to experienced players. So one of the questions for me is, can we actually afford to hang on to both Oliver and Track, given they are both so utterly crap by foot, and as good as they are, will continue to cost us in close games? Demon Cat says, I have to say I'm sick to death of these losses where we have more shots against our opposition but come up short because our players lack any sort of composure, both in front of goal and when making decisions with ball in hand. The difference today with how Pendlebury side-bottom and how managed that last 5 minutes compared to our senior players is damning. It cost us home and away wins, final wins, and dare I say a premiership somewhere between 22 and 24. I don't know what the answer is, but has been a massive failure of a current football department to get our players in the right headspace to finish all of the good work that they do. Spirit of Norm Smith says, yes, we lost it. We are grabbing defeat and losing it ourselves. 4 games now, Giants, Hawks, Saints, Pies. We were better. We should have won it. Question, what are the coaches doing? 3 years and we are still the same at poor scoreboard impact. Really frustrating. Our forward connection, again, we dumped the footy inside 50. Composure. Pendlebury and Sidebottom showed their class and the gaps to our mids. I love Track and Clary, but they both are the continuous major offenders. If only they could lower their eyes or execute better, it just hurts. Fritsch, oh my God, he's so frustrating. Marks 20 metres out and plays on and misses. I shouted out in frustration, just knew it would be costly, and it was. Rostar said, that hurts. That really hurts. Should have won again. We just lack composure up forward. Yes, you can look at the moments in the last quarter, Cozzy giving away a 50, Fritsch playing on without looking, but once again, this could have been put to bed with more accurate kicking for goal. How much we all would have loved beating the filth and walking away from the G without having to see that arrogant smirk on their faces. So, Georgia, another week of lamenting what could have been, and if we'd just had a little bit more composure with ball in hand and when lining up for goal, the Fritsch play on, it was oh my God, he absolutely should not have played on. He'd take that 30 seconds, as we said, on the clock kick, and well, maybe would have been a certain goal from dead in front.
It's. The word that kept cropping up there was composure.
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 The C word.
And people like, that situation with Fritsch was, apart from the 30 seconds, do you think someone like a Tom Hawkins would have played on from that?
Nope. No
he
one
would have
does.
walked back, taken his time and kicked the goal. That's what you're there to do. Just kick the goal. Make sure of it. But, when you play on, there is always the risk. But, get
There's
the
a
credit
lack
for
of
kicking the
confidence
goal.
as well from the set shots, I think, with him too.
Yeah. Look, he hasn't been the same with his kicking since his foot injury last year. I don't know what situation he's in at the moment, but
what was his
that
injury?
foot injury was at the end of 23.
that's right. Yeah. But he hasn't been the same since then.
No.
Yeah. So
Which foot was it? I can't remember. Was it
I
his
don't know.
left foot or?
I can't remember.
That's it.
But look, these things are all tied in with what we were just talking about. In any case, sometimes we've got lousy kicks up the field. We've talked about that for delivery into the forward line. Can you imagine what they were doing when they came out of the centre square this week and they saw a line of Howe, Frampton, and Moore, and one Melbourne tall in the. What else do you do? You kick
There was
it
a
in
few
there
times they had to stop because they were the only 3 players there. No one else was there.
Yeah. So, structure was wrong from what I could see. We've still got poor kicks. I'm just astounded that changes haven't been made to particular players who keep exhibiting the same basic faults with their kicking. You'll never make those players into good kicks, but they just keep making the same basic errors, the way they approach the ball, the way they address the ball coming in to kick for goal. You watch other players do it from other teams, and you can always see the bad kicks for goals always use poor technique as they approach, and we keep doing the same sort of thing, but nothing seems to change. So I don't know what to do. There is no answer. Supposedly there was a review done by the football department at the end of last year. Nobody knows what the findings of that were, but we're not seeing any improvement, certainly in the way that we're, with 54 entries inside 50, and we can only manage 6 marks. Not just the foot. We shouldn't be talking about just the big guys getting marks. But
that's the Hoyne's point, though, isn't it? Because that's the kicking, not the forward's fault. And so good. Of course, every now and again it'd be great to clunk one. But it's about the kicking.
But it should be the kicking to the smalls as well as the talls. But 6 marks inside 50.
But the positive in what you just said is that we're actually our score. Moving we're really turning into an elite ball moving team, and we did a better job at scoring ratio than the Pies did. I was saying the expected score before, and the reason I ended up fudging it is because I'd cut and pasted it wrong, and I was not sure of the number. I'd lost the headings. So it's really worth noting. The expected score was 75. We scored 71 points. Right, so that's bloody good for Melbourne. That's fantastic, but. So expected score, the way they look at it is each shot is worked out. There's a formula that goes into it. The simple version is the probability from that shot, or the likelihood, the average shot score from that shot. So you think of misses or whatever, but then you think of incredible goal like Fritsch hard up against the boundary. So our expected score was 75. We scored 71. And this is where they won the game. Is their expected score was 65.9, and they scored 72. So, it wasn't really a particularly bad kicking game for us, accuracy-wise. From set positions, we had 11 shots, 5 goals, 4, which is 45%, which is, obviously it would have been better if it was 6-3 or whatever, but 5-4 is better than what we normally do. Yeah. And they were 7-3 from their set shots. So there's the ball game right there.
7-3. That is exactly it. Yeah,
that's the ball game right there. And
they kick straight. We don't.
Yeah, exactly. But but the point I'm trying to make is 5-4 is okay. 5-4 is AFL average, right? 5-4 from the shots that we had so it wasn't as if we kicked ourselves out of it. And that's why I think it's important that they kick 7-3, because they're a bloody good kicking side. And so that's, I think, what's the answer? The answer is time and bringing in more elite ball users to offset our butchers. It's as simple as that. And, to get Seston into AFL, get him AFL ready and get him in the side is an excellent kick. Cully, I reckon, is an excellent kick. I think Howes could be used a bit more creatively, and I think he's a good kick. Get McVie more involved. He's a good kick. Sort Windsor, we brought Langford in, get him more involved. So I think it's time is the answer to that question.
Okay. Spirit of Norm Smith says Stephen May, the commander, forget about the Gawn discussion. May's back. He intercepted and controlled the last line. Disco Turner, he's arrived as a permanent player now, and he should settle down back to cement his role. Great attitude, and I absolutely love Disco Turner as much as I liked him as a forward. He's brilliant and composed as a defender, and our future in defence is in good hands, I think, with him. Bimano, what's your thoughts on our defence, in particular Disco's game, and maybe talk about Jake Lever, because I think he did a few good things later, but I don't know. I think he's still a bit rusty, but
he's had a history, hasn't he, of taking time to get back to his best, Lever, after injury, and it was, again, a really interesting game. I will watch it again and see whether my feeling is right on it. So it's a bit hard when the emotion of the game, but it was one of the most one-on-one games I can recall for a long time.
Lever's not very good one-on-one. No.
If you think about how few opportunities, even for Collingwood, like Howe's marks were one-on-one marks. When they almost top of my head, I'd be guessing 80% of those intercept marks. I think it was 17 or something. So a lot of intercept marks were taken. Almost all of them were one-on-one. Very few, maybe not all of them, but like very few were those third man into the contest type marks. And I think that was how good he set the game up. Again, like a really interesting tactical game. So Lever, he's not great one-on-one. He didn't have a great game. As I said, I really have got a lot of time for Turner. It'd be great to have him play both ends of the ground. Just on Stephen May, though, 4 coaches' votes and the top player, by the way, the coaches' votes were 10 to Josh Dacos. I didn't even notice him.
No, he was very good off half. I was thinking at one stage.
I'm sure he was. He got 10 coaches' votes.
Someone should be tagging him because we don't do well with that type of player off half back. Wanganeen Millera the other day, they just run riot. He had probably better first half than second half, but yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to cut George's lunch because he'll speak to it in a sec about tagging, but that's what they always say is the downside for tagging is you allow another player off the chain, and I wonder whether in this case it was Josh Dacos. I don't really ever notice opposition
But
players,
no one was even near him at any time. I'm not talking about tagging, but anyway.
Yeah, so the one player I did notice is just because I love how he plays is Jeremy Howe. He got 8 coaches vote, but Stephen May had 4, but his player rating was only 10.2. I thought he was one of our best players. He had a good kicking game. I just get so nervous when he tries those short kicks, but he was generally
he's better when he kicks longer. Yeah.
The game really suited him because I think Goody engineered a one-on-one contest game and Collingwood were happy to play it. And he's great one-on-one. He's strong and he had 𝗦ici's number. But he started, as I suspected he might, he started on Elliott. And I can't recall how much time he spent on Elliott, but that's how at the beginning of the game he lined up on Elliott. Terrific game by him. And, as much as that I'm not a huge fan of him going off at the skipper. That's part and parcel of who Steve May is, and he plays good angry, doesn't he? So, and he took a couple of clutch intercept marks, really clutch intercept marks, and hit the ground pretty hard on one of them. So, terrific game. Disco Turner, I think we've got something real special in that kid. Really I really like his certainty when he goes for the ball in the air. He doesn't take he's quick off the mark, and once he decides to go for an intercept, he just goes for it, and he's got good hands. And he set up the goal of the match for us. That was the best bit of play for the entire game. So there's one of the things I noticed in Jeff White's analysis of the Brisbane game was how they use Sharp. I think maybe it was another analysis. They use Sharp in the way that they use Nibbler to allow to him to do the defensive work, and Langdon as well. No, it was Joey Montagna, I think. They used Langdon in that match to free up Track to be in an aggressive position forward of the ball. Daniel Turner intercept marked and immediately kicked it 50 metres to Track, who was all by himself, who then he kicked it inboard to I think that set up Fritter's mark and goal. It was a beautiful bit of end-to-end transition, probably our best bit of play. And it was all set up because of Turner's ability to be certain about what he was doing, taking the mark, and like all good players know what he was going to do it next and then execute. It was a 55 metre kick to Track by himself. Terrific bit of footy.
Yeah, the other one I don't think we should forget in the back line who's improved out of sight is 𝗟𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀.
We had a Italy game this game, but he's all Australian lock, isn't he?
Yeah, he's
no, I don't think he is, and not because he doesn't deserve it. I think he's just too under the radar for.
I think a lot of people are noticing him. Jeez.
Yeah, but certainly for this club for the whole season, his consistency's been just superb. He's got that composure that's lacking up in the forward line that we know about. He's got it in bucket loads down the back line,
and he's for his height, he's unbelievable one-on-one in marking contests or when bring the ball to ground. And the other thing is, I'm amazed is, of course, he's a good kick, but he's also, when he hoofs it and he really gets onto it, he can really get distance. And also that had another thought around our kicking is Rivers, as much as I love him, he's a bit inconsistent, but he is a ball butcher,
Can I tell you, I was watching him. He was having some kicks pre-game with Choco Williams in the middle of the ground, and he was making Choco Williams run for it, like it was meant to should have been hitting him flush. And they were just going wide every time, and that's with no pressure, before the game. And I was like, oh my God.
That was the other thing I noticed before the game. I forgot to mention it before. There were 4 players who were practicing kicking from 30 metres out directly in front, and none of them were our butchers.
Oh, none of them were the butchers.
Yeah, with the people who should have been practicing.
I was watching the Collingwood players before game. They were not missing from anywhere. I only saw from, big man where I sit. So I only saw that angle, the players there, because I can't really tell for the guys on the other side. And every single one, 30 metres out, 40 metres, 50, boundary, everywhere. They were flushing them.
In the second warm-up, when they come out just before the game, that speaking of, what's his name, Langford, pick the ball up facing the boundary line, so in the pocket below you, so punt road end, on the wrong side for a left footer, pick the ball up. He was just sort of ambling along in half volley, picked up a half volley, swung onto his left foot, and from that pocket kicked it straight through the centre. I thought, there we go, son. That's he's got some talent. Jesus.
He does. Before we move on to the next one, just because it's not, I think someone mentioned it in one of the comments, but I couldn't put everything in that everyone said. Colt, this game, what were your thoughts on him, Ben? I'll start with you.
Oh, look, he needs to get more possessions. He's the sort of player you need to, get 15 to ideally 15 minimum. Just quickly though, we also this kicking inside 50 for all of the knocks that Spargo gets. He's by far and away our best kick inside 50. I saw a table on Demonland the other day. He is number 4 or number 5 in the AFL for goal kick for marking targets inside 50.
Of 4 kicks.
No, well, that's not the 4 kicks. Not a 4 kicks, George. He's elite. He's elite. And that's what we miss. So we're just talking about our inability to hit targets inside 50. He is our number 1 player, our best player kicking inside 50. And on a table in the AFL track, I think I can't remember the exact number. Maybe ATG is in the chat room. If you can remember the number, because I think it was his post. Track, I think I'm right in saying something crazy like 2 marks, of kicking inside 50 times. The players who kicked inside 50, he'd hit the target twice, or a player had marked the ball. Spargo is by far and away our best player by a country mile at kicking the ball inside 50. We have really missed him in the last, or particularly this game. It's exactly what we missed in this game. So, it's not about necessarily how many numbers they get and goals. It's about that kick inside 50.
No, it's how many kicks you kick inside 50. In the last game, he had 4 kicks.
Yeah, the last game he got injured, though.
He had 4 kicks in the game.
Yeah, but
percentages. It's just percentages against numbers.
No. Raw numbers, not percentage. Yeah. It's like he's our best player, George, kicking inside 50. That's why he's in the side. Why do you think Goody?
I don't know why he's in the side.
Because of that reason. Because we struggle to hit a target inside 50, and he's our best player at doing so. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science. That's why he's in the side, and he'll go straight back in the side as soon as he's fit. He'll be straight back in because he's by far and away best 22. He's the most underrated player. He's our best kick inside 50. We're just talking about how poor our kicking
kicked 1 goal in 11 games this year.
Because it's not about goal. It's not about kicking goals.
No, that's right, Ben. No, it's a forward who doesn't kick goals. That's what we need.
It's not about that, George. It's about goal assists and scoring.
Your microphone's dead, and George is responsible.
It's kicking it inside 50 is what it's about for those high half forwards, and he is the best that we've got, right? And that's why he'll be back into the team as soon as he can.
Just on Colt, any
He needs to get more. He's a brilliant kick, and there's another one. He's the future. Got to play him, but he's got to get his disposal count up, doesn't he?
No,
sorry.
Yeah, no. I was just going to say, I know he can kick that distance of the goal that didn't make the distance. So I don't know
it
what
wasn't so
happened
much,
there.
but
Maybe he was
see the
going for-
drilling kick he kicked down on the wing. They're the ones that you just got to hit. Down the wing, he hit the target 40 metres, low flat drop punt, hits the target, moves it quickly. They're the ones that, the best teams hit every time, or 80% of the time. And, love his energy. Just got to get a little bit more involved. Sorry, George, cut you off.
No, he's exactly right. Yeah, he's just got to get into the game more. But he's 18 years of age, but he's got it. Even that kick that he couldn't get from 50 later on in the game, he virtually kicked. The goal he did kick was from almost the same spot earlier on in the game. That's just fatigue as the game goes on. But he's got to get in there a bit more. But it's not unexpected for an 18-year-old. So
he just didn't make the distance. He still was accurate, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was online. But I've seen him kick highlights of him kicking from well outside 50, and I've seen him at training, so I don't know what happened.
But it is a bit of like the, I don't know what you call it, the George, you'd know with your, what's the air pressure? What's it called? I'm positive at the G on a winter's day, that starts getting heavy, the air, and the ball doesn't travel as far. Is it barometric pressure? Is that what it is, George?
Barometric, yeah.
Barometric.
It shouldn't change.
Whatever it is. I'm sure that
you have a cold front come through.
Rollo 2 says, does George still believe tagging is ineffective? If so, I have a bridge for sale at a great price. Please get in touch. 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁 says, I'm torn. Langdon did a fantastic job, but Langdon had 4 posies. He was averaging 21 before Monday, and when he gets the ball, he provides run and carry, and his averages 0.6 goals assists per game, not to mention 0.5 goals a game himself. He does that, we win, but maybe 𝗍𝗂𝗁, I don't know if that's a typo or a bad nickname, kicks another as well. It was a great job, but I feel he sacrificed too much of his role to do it. So George, what do you respond to Rollo? And has your position on the traditional tagging role changed?
No, this was exactly... The tagging's always a trade-off, that the coaches have to make a decision about, are we going to be more advantaged by shutting down 𝗍𝗂𝗁, or are we going to be less advantaged by losing all the output that we normally get from Langdon? We won't know because he was running with. He wasn't tagging in the traditional method that people expect, where you jump on them as soon as they remotely get near the ball. Langers was able to run with him, and denying 𝗍𝗂𝗁 the ability, because he's such a vital role in the way Collingwood moves the ball, because of his skills, but also his speed. So you deny him getting the ball in the first place, or not getting away with it, really changes the complexion of the game. Now, unfortunately, as 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁 has pointed out, Langdon had 4 possessions for the game, 2 kicks, -5, I think it was, for metres gained. And normally for Langers, we'd be expecting, numbers in the, kicks 15 or so for the game, anywhere up to 500 metres gained with the way he plays the game. So how much did we lose? How much did we gain? Again, it's an unknown, but it's exactly why coaches don't use taggers, is because you've got to balance that out. And the danger is, and I think we actually covered it pretty well, we didn't put Langers in the middle with 𝗍𝗂𝗁. We used Oliver with him, and when 𝗍𝗂𝗁 moved down the forward line, I think McVie picked him up. So you sometimes give away too much, particularly in the midfield if you start to use a tagger, because you out of the 6 players that are in there, you're taking one player who's usually not very good at doing the midfield role out of the equation, so the work goes on to the other midfielders to achieve something. So it's more a run with role, 𝗍𝗂𝗁 still got 19 possessions and a goal and goes on, but he probably would have had 34 otherwise. Difficult question, and like I said, we'll never know the answer, but just as equally, that's why this is the danger for coaches. You lose too much compared to what you gain. Players are a lot more skillful than what they used to be in the past, and you can't afford to take a really good player out of the game just to try and shut down one from the other side. And this we saw in this game, Collingwood's fortunate they got a Josh Dacos as well, who can be almost as equally damaging in a game. But we let him sort of loose. I don't know how loose he was, it's a difficult question.
Before you go on, the power of Google, back on Spargs. So thanks ATG in the chat room. 50% of his kicks inside 50 are marked. 50%. So half the time he kicks the ball inside 50, it is marked by one of our players, not by one of the opposition players, one of our players. And we just spent 15 minutes talking about our inability to hit targets inside 50, and we're criticising a player who does that better than anyone else in our side. He's top 5 in the AFL for percentage of marks kicked, marks taken from kicks that he does inside 50. By contrast, the worst player in the AFL, Christian Petrarca. So back in May, he had the worst kick inside 50 in the competition, Christian Petrarca. Only one of his 45 kicks inside 50 was marked. All right, so that's just where the game's at. So that's even leaving aside the Spargo thing, that's damning, isn't it, on track? He's the worst in the AFL for anyone who over X amount of 1 from 45.
Get him out of the side.
Yeah, get him out. That's right. Put Spargo in there.
Yeah. Mandalorian says, thoughts on potentially re-signing 𝗍𝗲 on a $12 million 9-year contract. I firmly believe we've got to do everything possible to keep 𝗍𝗲 in the red and blue. If it means paying him a fortune over the next decades, the bet is simply irreplaceable, he said. Is it over? Maybe. But then again, maybe not. All I know is that we probably have now 9, if he does sign, 9 more years of Willie won't he every single year. So I hope that's not too soon. Big man, nothing official yet. All signs point to him re-signing. It really sounds like it. What are your thoughts?
One of my thoughts is, can you please use any leverage you've got, seeing your Max Gawn's Max Gawn sponsor? Can you not get some intel and break it here on Demonland? Can you give him a call? Text him now. Just say it's Andy.
I'm not going to text him. It's I
wrote on Demonland yesterday. His box office. He's like, I've talked about my Jared Healy rule. When he abandoned us, when he left us for the Swans, left his brother, Sugar. I still haven't forgotten him. That's the last time I vowed I wouldn't get angry about players leaving, and I'd be, 𝗟𝗏𝗄𝗏. There's only been a few exceptions. Nibbler came close, but I've gotten over Nibbler already. Farmer was the one that really, really stung, but I completely understood. I felt no sort of angst. I really also, for different reasons, was really sad to see Hogues go, and Oscar McDonald as well was another one that I was really sad to see go. 𝗍𝗲 is well and truly in that category. I would be devastated. He just makes going to the footy fun. He's like I wrote on Demonland, sure, that was a lucky goal he kicked off the ground, but genius makes it, geniuses make their own bloody luck, don't they? That was unbelievable. His ability to think, he just thinks so quickly on the football field and perhaps off it as well. He's unbelievable, just so fun to watch. Every time he goes near the ball, it's like, as I said, he's our best kick. It literally is our most accurate kick. He's the only player I have any faith in anymore with set shots. He's just exciting to watch. I don't know why would there be any controversy? What's the number? Like 9 million over 9 years?
12 million over 9 years. Well, I don't know how it relates to the 2 that he's already serving. It's an extra 7 years.
For one, the game's coming to a player like him. For players who can run through the midfield and also go forward, it's like I was saying before, they are the most important players in footy at the moment, is those mid-sized forwards. He's our best goal kicker. I don't think that, the only question would be is the length of contract, but like as we've just seen with Petrarca and Oliver, it provides the club a lot of leverage. If a player wants out, we've got the leverage for the deal. I'd just do it in a heartbeat, sign him up. I'll be so thrilled, as every Melbourne fan would. Ghostwriter wrote on, there was something fun thing about, how much kids love him. And someone wrote on Demonland that my kids would be devastated because they just love him so much. And I wrote that I love him so much. He makes footy great to watch it. And I thought that was a really, really interesting response from Jeff White to the question about comparing him and the Wiz. And I agree with what Jeff White said, that he's probably in some ways more similar to Aaron Davey, who looked in pretty good nick, by the way, I have to say.
He does, doesn't he?
Geez, he looks pretty good for his age. That pressure that he provides up forward, and his smarts, and like he's got all of the best attributes of Jeff Farmer and of Flash, and he's arguably at the moment top 5 player in the AFL, I reckon. And I mean, he's a big chance at making All Australian even after missing his first 3 games of the season. If they could do it, I'd be so thrilled. I'd almost be so happy that it'd be like whatever happens after that for the rest of the season is just icing on the cake. It's just I don't know about what you boys feel, but
we have no replacement for him. There's just no one who can't replace him in the midfield, can't replace him in the forward line. He gets bums on seats. Look, from a marketing perspective, he's great, not because he's a great talker or anything like that, because you don't really ever see much, but you don't need it. Just the aura around him and the visuals of him on the field just can sell, membership. So,
he's just great to watch, isn't he? He's just great to watch.
Whatever we have to give him, we have to give him.
Yeah, totally. And in all seriousness, that stuff you're talking about, Andy, that should be factored into what he's worth. Like, if he's box office, people want to see him outside his actual raw ability, which is incredible. Like his numbers, I haven't looked, but I remember a couple of years ago we talked about it. He's well ahead of, for instance, Cyril Rioli on almost every metric. And Rioli is, universally, it seems, I'd say, is regarded as the best small forward of, maybe in the last 20, 30 years. Cos is tracking to be better. So
I think so.
What do you reckon, George?
Oh, people shouldn't be tied up about either the duration or the money. I mean, we talked about Aaron Norton before. I think he's on 9-year contract or something ridiculous for someone who's a very ordinary forward, and I don't think he's going to be remotely as valuable to Footscray as 𝗍cie will be in the future. Would Collingwood be offering Daicos a 9-year contract at the similar? Of course they would. Why would we even quibble about this? And as Binman pointed out, or you pointed out, if he decides to go home, well, somebody else is going to be paying for it. It's not that we're going to be losing financially as a club as a result of it, but probably profiteering effectively because he's around playing for Melbourne instead of someone else. So, if that's what's required, and people have just got to get over the numbers. Because,
and also the CBA increase, isn't there?
I think the average player is now $325,000 a year.
And it'll go up in a few years to 50 or whatever. He's worth 3 average players. He literally is our best mid and our best forward. So, and I love watching him play. Having said all that, that was incredibly stupid thing he did with that 50. God, he's done some frustrating things in the last few weeks.
I think we have to factor into any clauses that he's every year, is he going to go home? That has to end. It's like,
you're staying
the duration.
It's the first 2 or 3 games through suspension every year. We can't have that.
That's going to, I'm sure it's hard to stamp out. I think that's the way he plays. All right, let's get on to the 𝗍cie stuff. On a freezing Saturday night at Whitten Oval, the 𝗍cie Demons defied both the elements and a determined Collingwood side to claim a gritty 9-point victory, notching their 3rd consecutive win and continuing their march towards VFL finals contention. In slippery, wet conditions that made clean footy nearly impossible, 𝗍cie set the tone early with intense pressure and composed ball movement, holding the Magpies goalless in the opening term. Despite an inaccurate return in front of goal, mirroring the issues plaguing their AFL counterparts, the Demons managed to maintain control for much of the night thanks to a strong defensive foundation and a spread of contributors across the ground. Riley Bonner was sensational off halfback and through the midfield, amassing 35 disposals, 9 marks and significant drive with both inside and rebound 50s. Mitch Hardy, 31 disposals, 1 goal, and Jack Billings, 30 disposals, 1 goal, were everywhere, combining their class and experience to steady the ship in crucial moments. Billings' leadership came to the fore when he snapped a late goal to halt Collingwood's final term surge, with Paddy Cross following up shortly after with a freakish goal off the ground to all but seal the win. Bailey Laurie, 29 disposals, 1 goal, provided dynamism around the contest, particularly early, while Tajwa Woden, 22 disposals and 7 tackles, lifted when it mattered, asserting his influence late in the game. Riley Baldy also brought the heat with a game-high 15 tackles, exemplifying the team's hard-nosed intent. Tom McDonald and Marty Hall were vital in defence, helping keep the Magpies to just 3 goals by three-quarter time. The dual ruck combination of veteran Tom Campbell and emerging big man Will Varell played a significant role in giving the Demons first use out of the centre, reinforcing Casey's midfield dominance. And despite the dour conditions and frustrating inaccuracy, 15 behinds from 22 scoring shots, Casey's ability to execute under pressure, maintain structure and share the load across all lines was the difference. The win is another encouraging sign of the team's growing cohesion and depth, particularly with key listed players and VFL stalwarts blending seamlessly. With finals on the horizon, Casey's confidence and consistency are building at the right time. They now prepare for a curious home fixture against Essendon's VFL side at Port Melbourne's ETU Stadium. That's in your neck of the woods, in the bin, man.
That's down at Port.
Oh, where did you say it was? ET?
It's a Port Melbourne.
It was my neck of the woods. I was all head up to go to this game, and then I saw the weather forecast and realised I'd forgotten I needed to wash my hair that night. So
the thing was, the weather wasn't a factor in this game. It was
bloody cold though. Geez.
It was bloody cold, yeah. But it seemed to be raining everywhere else in Victoria, but it certainly wasn't on in that match. But
Steve Billings kicked a beauty, George.
Yeah, at the end of the game, it was great.
Won us the game, didn't it? It gave
basically, it did, yeah, basically. But I'll just read out the final score: 7-15. Here we go again. 7-15.
Well, they're practicing, aren't they? They're practicing.
And just to here we go again. It was halfway. I don't know what the final number finished up. Halfway through the third quarter, free kick count was 18-8. Collingwood's favour.
Yeah, I did do that.
Yeah, so everything. I think when someone on Demonland commentated as the match was being played, I hope this isn't a precursor to Monday, and it's exactly a precursor to it. So,
well, we were more accurate on Monday, but
yeah. What was interesting in this game was the number of Melbourne players who weren't playing this week compared to last week. There was no Cully, no JVR, no Jeffo, no Tolstrup, no Howes, no Seston, and surprisingly no Sharp. So I don't know what was going on there. But that's a lot of players to take out of the side for a start off. Collingwood had a lot of no names in there, but they had Mason Cox and Tom Mitchell and Oleg Markov playing for them.
I completely forgot that Tom Mitchell had won in Brownlow.
Yeah, and
I was like, oh, what? Tom Mitchell's kicking the Jew around. Well, not the Jew. He's in freezing. He's Brownlow medalist.
He's only back from injury after 2 weeks, but it's always been the same with Tom Mitchell. He gets lots of possessions, none of which hurt you. And he probably won a Brownlow off the back of 30 plus possessions every game. But like I said, none of them ever hurt anybody. So, but yeah, he was playing down in this game.
Like the 50-odd possessions that, what's his name, got for the Dogs that day.
No, I prefer Bailey. Bailey Dale. Yeah, he was doing a lot more than Mitchell ever did. Look, there was, it really pointed out to us a couple of things. Bailey Laurie's too good for VFL, but he's not good enough for AFL.
That's the problem. There's a lot of
it's a funny one, isn't it?
Yeah, Tom McDonald is streets above, playing in the VFL level. Probably the same for Marty Hoare as well. Same sort of scenario. They're just not quite right. Fullerton. I think he kicked 1 goal, but he just doesn't put in when he needs to put in. He just there's almost no second efforts.
And
Likewise,
the thing, George, that he's got to do if he wants to play AFL footy is he's got to be hitting contests like his life depends on it, and he just doesn't.
He doesn't, yeah. And I don't think he's got the physical attributes in the first place. I don't think he's big enough and strong enough.
No, and so that's what he's got to be doing. That's why AJ's getting a game. They moved Kentfield forward. I think it was in the third quarter, which I thought was a good move because he's had a really bad start to the season with his pneumonia. He didn't get fit until a third of the way through the season to be able to even get onto the ground. I think he'll show some promise there. He's a great mark, absolutely superb mark, and I think he'll grow into a forward role better than a backman's role. I think he's a bit wasted down the back line, but we'll wait and see. The other one I thought is starting to show a bit is Ricky Mentha. He was all at sea completely in the first third. First part of the season. Goal. Was his first goal for the season? I think they said.
I think it was. Yeah. But he's starting to get involved in the game, which comes about confidence in your own abilities and where you fit into the team and things like that. So,
George, I think if he's potentially a really important player if we can get him up to into best 22 because it means we're not so reliant on 𝗍𝗲. We can use him more as a midfielder and not we're not always paying Peter to rob Paul in how we use 𝗍𝗲. So.
And like you were talking about before, I'm less enamoured of McAdam, but I reckon Mentha could be, because McAdam's 29, nearly 30 now. Mentha's, I think, for the future will provide us much more if he can get there.
That's right.
So he's only just starting to get there. Difficult to take. We won this game. It was good. 𝗪cie is certainly getting on a bit of a roll here. I think Collingwood were top four prior to this game, so they're no mugs. What I was really surprised how poor Mason Cox is, given his huge size advantage. Firstly, they didn't play him in the ruck very often, which was strange. They sat him down the forward line, and I think he took one mark down there that I can remember, but. It's just amazing how little influence someone who's that big and so much bigger than every other player at VFL level had so little influence on the game.
Conditions wouldn't have suited him.
One of the things, though, that sorry, Andy, what was that mean?
I just said conditions wouldn't have suited him.
No, well, as George said, it actually didn't rain during it. But he's a beautiful kick, though. And it's like he's learned how to kick. I thought Varel showed a little bit. I wouldn't be jumping up and down too much, but a little bit more. If he can, he's got a way to work into his body. But he's another player. He's got to kick goals, doesn't he? Because he's not really big enough to be number one ruck. He's got to be kicking some goals too.
No, you've got to have something more than he's only 199. So you've got to be either really strong or really mobile.
Yeah, but he might get stronger. He's looking a bit more mobile. It's a bit about whether he can get to that sort of. Yeah, he's got to be like Grundy, super fit and run all day.
All right, let's move on. But before we move on, it's not really breaking news, but from Callum Toomey, expectation is that 𝗍𝗲, the 𝗍𝗲 extension will be announced as soon as Thursday. Deal agreed. 𝗍𝗲 to be the longest player signed in the AFL. So. Callum Toomey's pretty reliable.
Completely missed an opportunity then, Andy. You should have said, look, I've just got a message back from Max. He's going to get signed on Thursday. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? Ahead of the game, ahead of the Port game.
Callum Toomey, I think, has got his finger on the pulse. That tweet is
that would just be Collingwood. What happened in the Collingwood game?
Yeah. So let's go to changes. Vice captain Jack Viner could finally return after more than a month on the sidelines with concussion and a hand fracture. The hard nut returned to light training after undergoing surgery on his fractured hand last week. Apparently, I read today that he was training in a glove today, but he's pushing his case for a return in the Demons clash with Port Adelaide on Sunday, pending a fitness test ahead of the weekend. Barring any mystery injuries of the week, the Demons are at almost full strength, except for 𝗟𝗲 𝗏𝗏, who's big man says is our most important player. George, followed by B-Man. Any changes for this week's match against Port?
I doubt we'll see many changes, unfortunately, but I think we're going to have to, given our situation, where we're going to have to start looking at making some.
Resting some of the young kids.
Yeah. I really think we need another that second tall or third tall, so more to the point, in the forward line. If it's Jeffo and JVR and Petty as your forward line, I think that's what we need if we're using one of them in the ruck at least. I'm really concerned. This is the second week in a row. Langford and Lindsay very tired.
Particularly Langford. You're right about Langford. He was plodding at the end.
Yeah.
And that's not surprising, as you said. First season AFL, mid-season bye. Geez, it's tough.
I wouldn't be surprised to see them with one of those swapping with Lindsay off the sub. With
Windsor.
Windsor as the sub. Yeah, so 𝗦cie comes back in. I can't see a need for Sharp to come back in, for example.
Though, arguably we missed his running. I thought, it's hard to tell, obviously. 𝗦cie's an interesting one. There's a chance they won't play him just to let him get right because the bye is the following week.
Yeah.
We really missed his
Then he's missed
skills.
Then he's missed a lot. He's missed then a lot of footy.
Yeah, but he missed his kicking skills, but we didn't. But we really missed his intensity on King's birthday, didn't we?
Yeah. It's going to be difficult. I think a couple of those younger ones might drop out just for the and 𝗦cie come in perhaps.
Seston. I wouldn't mind seeing it.
He was on the injury list, wasn't he, or did he play?
No, he didn't
like
play.
George said, there were a whole raft of players that didn't play in that Collingwood game who weren't injured, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, he was actually on the injury list when I looked at it today.
Oh, that's a new one. Yeah.
And I'm not sure when that was done because unless Melbourne posted something today. I didn't. Ollie Seston hamstring test.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't know if that was done. It doesn't have a date on. Usually they have a date of when that was put in, but no.
Yeah. All right.
Well, 𝗦cie comes back in if you hope. So he comes in and maybe maybe even resting Lindsay or. But I could see them doing exactly that. George is starting Windsor. Interesting though, isn't it, that he really didn't play halfback flank, and that experiment still got a bit of hasn't been a roaring success him off the halfback flank, has it? So a lot of people on Demonland be keen to see him back on the wing. I think Lindsay, that is. Windsor, that is.
This week begins 4 weeks of 4 weeks worth of interstate matches when we face off against the Power from Port prior to the bye week, followed by a trip to the Gold Coast and then back to Adelaide to take on the Crows. And despite a win last week against the Giants, the Power have been very disappointing in Coach Ken Hinkley's final season at the helm. They've been on the receiving end of some embarrassing drubbings, yet sit equal with the D's on the ladder, separated by 7 percentage points, with the Power having that game in hand because they've already had the bye. The loss for the Demons this week will see them re-enter the bottom 4 as they head into the bye. So, big man, followed by George, your preview of this week's match in Adelaide.
But just before I do, I wanted to give a shout out. I should have done that before, to Daniel E288, if you're listening, Daniel, who was good enough to put on Demonland that he had a ticket available with someone. Wanted it, and I did, and he met me outside the ground. Good to see someone with the actual card, not on the phone, and so that was terrific. And it was I'm really glad I went, even though my heart's broken. So shout out. Really
is that an illegal transaction there? Are you allowed to transfer these tickets? Transferable?
No, well, yeah, you can, because it was a membership, and so yeah. My other one, my post half time is borderline not legal. But anyway, we won't get into that. Port haven't changed the way they play under Hinkley at all. Like George and I have said the same thing about Port now for 4 years, is their forward half, get it in, trap it in, They're a team that just, I think under Hinckley, never worked out the defensive system properly. They can get opened up. They're a team that play on emotion, like they really bank on their emotion and getting up. I don't know whether they'll be able to sort of get up for this. It's not, one of their big games against Adelaide or whatever, which is when they seem to. It depends a little bit. For me, I'm really confident that it depends on where we were at in terms of our fatigue levels. I can't remember. I should have looked whether they're coming. Are they coming out of a bye?
They played the Giants.
No, they played the Giants.
They had a bye the week before.
Yeah. So we're both got our buys coming up. So
no, they've had.
Like my theory was that we were looking to peak for the Pies game, which unfortunately might mean that we might drop off a little bit in this game. But having said all that, we play really super at the AFL, and one of the things about Port are they're a really bread and butter side under Hinckley. It's all about stoppages. It's all about contested possessions. It's all about winning the contest. Butters and Rosie sort of exemplify exactly what they're all about. Remarkably, though, they're 16th in the AFL for contested possessions, which I suspect would be one of the lowest rating for contested possessions at this part of the season at any time under Hinckley. So they're not going super well. They've played a handful of good games, but they've played some real shockers, haven't they, George? They're the best sort of stats. They're fourth in turnovers per game, so they force the turnovers. They're fifth in stoppage clearances, so that'll be a big factor in which way the game goes, because we're a stoppage team as well. So they rely a lot on winning their stoppages. But as I said, they're ranked 16th in the AFL for contested possessions per game, which is for them is super low for a team. And this goes to that whole discussion about forward lines. They've got a relatively decent forward line. Is it Lord? Is it the young player they got up there?
Well, he's injured, may be coming back this week. He played in the SANFL, I think, this week.
All right, and Georgiades, and of course I know Marshall's out, but he's out for the season, isn't he? But they're 16th in the AFL for contested marks, so they've got better forwards than us, arguably. Can't take a bloody mark up forward, or anywhere, 16th in contested marks. They're 14th in centre clearances, and that's really been their bread and butter, is winning stoppages for the last few years when they've been really playing their best footy. They're 15th in score involvements. They're 13th in metres gained. So they're just not moving it really in the way that when they're playing their best footy. They're a long way off their best footy. I mean, they've got some terrific players. I love Zach Butters, Rosie. It'd be really interesting to see whether we send, a tag or whether we look to minimise their. I don't think we will. Certainly not in the way we did with Dacos. I can't see it, but they're a pretty. They play one way, and if we can take away their contested and win the stoppages, we'll win this game, and we play well there. So, it depends a bit on our fatigue level, but the betting has got it about right. They're $2, and we're $2, and they're $1.95. I could easily see a starting favourite. Given the fact that it's in Adelaide, it just shows how Port are travelling, I reckon.
I just had some notes. I watched the game against GWS, and the thing that struck me right from the very start is exactly what you opened up with there, Bitman. They are playing exactly the same style of play as what they were 4 years ago, and they haven't got a Charlie Dixon up forward anymore. And
that probably speaks to that 16th in or whatever it was in contested marks. They're just not clunking anything up forward.
No, they've got nothing up forward. They use Finlayson up forward, and he's sometimes okay, sometimes not. What was interesting is keep an eye on Visentini, their ruck, their new kid as a ruck. He will be something in the near future.
But the while's off yet.
But this is only his 10th or 11th game. Yeah. But he's going to be something seriously good. They'll probably have Jason Horne-Francis back this week as well. Who's been out for a couple of weeks. Their backline, again, they've got lots of talls down their back, and this is why I'd want to be bringing Jeffo in for this game.
That's a really good point, I reckon.
Yeah, they've got Radaglia.
Who's slow with a wet week, Radaglia.
Oh, yeah, he is, but he's still a great big log down there. Burton and Zerk Thatcher. So you don't want to be in exactly the same situation, particularly with Alear like we were with Howes, just leaving him.
Melksham will probably go to him, and then a big.
Well, he'll have to. He'll have to, to stop that because they utterly depend on him. That's where their drive comes from. Their midfield isn't what it used to be. They're still playing Boak, and Wines is nowhere near what Wines used to be. So they depend on the Rosie and Butters, but they're not real grunting inside midfielders, Rosie and Butters. But so hopefully we've got
Butters. Butters. But Rosie was playing off a half-back flank for the first part of the year, but now he's gone back to sort of midfield rotation and.
Yeah, what was interesting was the way they moved the ball. They always look to go through the middle, always for a start off, and then they kick long into the forward line. Like I said, they kick long into the forward line, like Charlie Dixon was still there, but he isn't, and the ball just comes straight out the other end, up the other end straight away. If it wasn't for Rioli in this game, they wouldn't have kicked any goals basically. They kicked 7-7 out of their total score of nine goals from turnovers. So the Giants were giving them the opportunity in this particular game, but they didn't really win anything off their own boot. It was because of the opposition's errors that they actually scored. So, they're just the same old Port. You could get smashed by them. You might win by 100 points. They're just so unreliable. It's not surprising that the Port fans have been calling for ages to get rid of Hinkley. There's just been no change whatsoever. One thing we do have to do under all circumstances is do not let Farrell get the ball when he's within 50 metres and somebody else has taken a mark. He has got one of the longest kicks in the AFL, and they're constantly looking for him to take that easy handoff and take the long shot, mainly because they haven't got many other options. But people have got to be on their game to make sure that he doesn't slip in sideways because he can be very damaging with that kick.
I watched the game. I just forgot that I watched it. Geez, you'd be a bit just on a different. You'd be a bit worried if you're a Giants fan. They were woeful in that game.
Yeah,
it's like 50 points, 66. It wasn't. It was a tough old game. But it'll be interesting to see how that was up in Canberra. That game, wasn't it? So
it's freezing
for them. Freezing, difficult conditions. You're totally right. It depends. That's what I mean about they're really inconsistent. That's what I mean by they play on emotion. So if they turn up and they're wound up, but it just doesn't feel like a game that they would be for. It's not. There's not much riding on it. And both teams probably looking for the bye. So I'm.
No, they've had their bye. They've had their bye. So.
Oh, they've had their bye. So right, they're on the other side of their bye. Right.
Yeah. All right, well, that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. We'll be back next week to break down that round 14 match against the Power. If you want to listen to the show live as it happens, we'll be back on a Monday night, a regular scheduled programming at 8 p.m. Thank you to our 5-star reviewer on Apple Podcasts. That was Ralph on the floor. And as always, your questions and comments are an integral part of the show. So thank you to our Demonland posters who submitted questions and comments. Thank you to Clintosaurus, Radish D, Monocular, Travy14, Bucknaked, Rostar, Red and Blue Beard, D Positive, Spirit Norm Smith, Lazy, El Diablo 14, At the Break of Gorn, Old D, Wells 11, Demon Cat, Rollo 2, Mandy Lorian, and apologies to Sam, 6172, Doug Reamer, Dr. Gonzo, Robbie 87, Oh My D's and What Say What. Couldn't squeeze in some of your stuff, but appreciate you contributing. Thank you to my co-hosts, George and Binman, and thank you to you, our loyal listeners. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read it out and on next week's show. Go Demons.
Go Red Leggers.